Hello and welcome to episode 66 of The Imperial Truth. I'm Greg. Joining me is Neil.
Hello, Greg.
Hello, Neil. So boisterous and fun. Before we go anywhere, we should mention our sponsors, Element Games. They are the purveyors of everything plastic. So go and get your Warhammer, Age of Sigmar, Warhammer 40k, Heresy, anything else from them. And if you order it on pre-order weeks, because there's going to be some stuff coming up over more than 1 week, I believe, then you get an extra 5% off usually. So with the 8th edition starter set, whatever that may be coming up, head over there, go to theimperialtruth.com, hit the advert, head over there, buy your stuff, get it Saturday morning. Bish bash bosh.
I
Nice.
will be doing an order with them 100% for all my 40k goodness.
Yes, which we'll get into a little bit later. But, yeah, absolutely brilliant. As always, I've said it enough. We're not going to belabor the point in this episode. Go check out Element and their venue as well.
And so, following up from Element Games is Lil Legend Studios. So Miles is, cracking out loads of work as usual, massively high standard. He's been doing all sorts of other bits and pieces recently as well, like with painting competitions and being on other podcasts and all bits and bobs. But he is the man to go to if you need something painted, if you want to learn some painting techniques, doing a bit of one-to-one tuition, whatever you fancy really. He's definitely worth getting in contact with if you've got something that needs doing.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're intrigued about it, follow him on Twitter or Facebook, and you can see he's actually posted up a couple of photos of his sessions and people's work and things as well. But if you aren't sure, talk to him. He'll talk to you about what he does and the services he offers, because it's cool stuff. It really is. Brilliant. What we're going to do, we're going to change the show up a little bit. We're going to move away from having a news segment and do it in the intro, just because having kind of editing the show and stuff, maybe we dragged it out a little bit too much over the course of that. So we're going to condense that a little bit. Hopefully just bring the show time down just a little bit. With, our usual amount of waffle, but maybe not spread over so many segments, which I think might just keep it a little bit more concise, flow a little bit more. So that's our plan. Whether it works or not, well, I'm sure we'll find out, but we'll give it a go.
We will try.
But we will still talk about what we've been up to a little bit. Neil, so are you back on the horse yet?
Yeah, I'm not doing too bad actually. I've been managing to get a few hours in here and there. I'm definitely not down to every single night. I'm probably doing 3 nights or 4 nights out of the week, getting a couple of hours at the table done, which is good because I'm sort of feeling it, but not 100% into the full swing, which is good in a way because I feel less pressured, but I'm still getting a bit of enjoyment out of it. So that's the main thing for me. I'm still enjoying painting black and white on Corax.
Excellent stuff. Yeah, I know the feeling. I haven't got, I had the South Coast Grand Tournament, so I had a little bit of painting to get ready for that. And then that was 4 days kind of that took up. Come back from it, haven't really done, I'm without a car at the moment, which is a bit of a hassle. So kind of getting in after, stuff. And I'm like, I don't want to take stuff to work because I'm relying on someone else and all that jazz. So I've been a bit, and this weekend I'm hoping to crack on because I've had an offer to go and do some stuff and I need to get some Mechanicum stuff finished up in relation to doing that. So that's hopefully going to give me the motivation, and around sorting my flat out as well. I need to find some space and time to really get going on some modelling. But
modelling or painting?
Both. Both. At the end of the day, I still think, because I haven't really got around to doing my Space Wolf squads yet, I've made some purchases, things like the Heresy trading group on Facebook is brilliant. So I missed out on a Mastodon by half a minute, and it was a Mastodon built for £280 delivered. That's a £300 model built well by someone else, which saves me all the hassle because I don't like building big things. I'm like, that's crazy, you know. And I was like umming and ahhing. It's like, well, I can afford it. Yeah, go for it. Oh, just too late. But you know, I got a Dreadclaw for, I can't remember how much I paid for it now, just over 60 quid. But again, it's built, so it just saves me that hassle.
It's that, yeah, because I mean, for you, I mean, you really detest that building stage, don't you? Or you're really not into that. So it's funny how some people would see that as a devalue of the goods, but for you, it's a massive increase in value.
But, you know, there's people selling unmade stuff on there. There's people selling painted stuff. And you can get some really good deals. And the deal to suit you as well, depending on what you want. It's, unfortunately, I've looked at it, I've gone, right, no more buying of stuff unless it really jumps out, because I've got a huge pile of unpainted stuff. But if you're looking for a Dreadnought drop pod, the odd one goes up there. I mean, they're not cheap, but that's the only place you're going to get them unless you make them yourself. And, you know, there's the odd thing comes up like that Mastodon, and it's like, actually, or a Titan goes up with, you know, a bit knocked off or what have you. So it's a good group to be on. I mean, there's other ones for other things. Obviously, Heresy trading is for Heresy. Some other stuff does get mixed in with that, but, they're useful. They are useful. And the forums as well. 30k forums had some little bits and pieces which I've grabbed up. So,
yeah, I'll have to get onto those sites or those pages, I think, and have a good look around, I think.
Yeah, I'll just keep an eye on it. And, you know, I missed out on I think it was another Dreadclaw, which was all magnetised, and that went for 60 quid on the nose, I think.
Well, that's not bad, is it? It's good.
It's built, it's magnetised, and it's cheaper than you get it if you order it straight from Forge Road, you know, with postage and everything else. So I'm like, keep an eye on it. And as I say, I don't have anything I need specifically right at the moment, but if a good enough deal comes up, it means I can jump on it as soon as. So, yeah, and if you're after, I should probably mention another one. I'm going to try and remember the name of it. There's one that's designed not for profit, basically. It's a group of guys. Let me try and get it up. Actually, a guy near us, I might have mentioned it before. He, started this group about getting limited edition models, particularly. It's something like Warhammer World. No, it's not that. I can't remember what it is now. But it's
was this just a limited edition model?
Yeah, it's about people doing stuff without profit. So
okay, cool.
It's a case of like these guys will is it tabletop fair trading? Might be that one. Let's have a look. Or that might be the normal one. Yeah. Okay, tabletop fair trading is to provide a group free from scalping. So the idea of this is people will post up, I'm going to, is it that one? Oh no, it's not that one. It's another one. Rubbish. Anyway, I will try and find the name of it. But it's about, like, people who are going to Warhammer World will say, look, I'm going to Warhammer World. Does anyone need me to pick something up? And they'll do it at cost plus postage. Which is really good, because, you know, that can be a lot of hassle.
Yes, so many times you hear about stuff that's only available in Warhammer World, and you know, to get there can be a pain for even people in this country.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's not easy. It's a day off work a lot of the time. So yeah, there is that kind of stuff. So feel free to go and look for that. I will try and find the name of it. I can't remember for the life of me. So that's all good.
Are there any sites that do parts?
There is.
Bits.
Okay. I probably should get them as a sponsor if I'm going to do this, shouldn't I? I believe, let me just have a little check on what we're talking, because parts for 30k models. Again, look on the trading groups and put up what you're looking for, because it's amazing how many people go, oh yeah, I've got a spare head from the Guilliman kit, or I've got a spare sword arm from Fulgrim. It's like, really?
I suppose sometimes, I mean, it could be that where Forge World sometimes send you a replacement part, sometimes there's extra parts on that replacement sprue, as it were.
Yeah, absolutely.
So sometimes people might just have a spare head or a spare arm or something.
Sometimes it's that. Sometimes they converted them. Sometimes they bought a whole Primarch for one bit for another model. So there's all that now. Okay, so eggheadminiatures.com. So this is a guy who buys in boxes of Forge World, cuts it up, cuts them off the sprue, sells them individually.
Oh,
So
cool.
let me have a little look at this. So let's look at Alpha Legion. Because I don't know what the prices are. Obviously, you're going to play a premium, as you do with any bit site, because that's the nature of what they do. So a Forge World 40k Alpha Legion Cataphractii right shoulder pad, £1.85. Now, that's not cheap, but if you only need one shoulder pad, it's better than buying 5.
Yes, that's true. And I think for me, I remember I was trying to buy, before the chain glaives came out, I was frantically trying to get hold of the Sevatar chain glaive.
Sure.
And of course, the only place you get that, obviously, with the Sevatar model, obviously they're a premium. Managed to get one. I think it cost about £4 or £5, but I just needed one for a conversion.
Yeah, it's better than spending 60
way
quid.
better than spending 60 quid for Sevatar.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm looking on the site at the moment. A lot of things are sold out because of the nature of what they're doing. It's that more elite product. So things like, I'm on the Death Guard one, Callous Typhon, his Reaper Blade, sold out. But go down to the shoulder pads. There's shoulder pads. It's obviously they're going to stock things like shoulder pads and heads more than, some other stuff like individual character stuff. But there's pages here, and I know guys who know the guy. I think I don't know if I know him or not. But you can go and look for the different bits you need on there. Maybe a little bit easier than some other places. But again, as I say, you've got 30k forums, you've got a trading section, and I'm sure other forums have as well. And then Facebook on the Heresy trading or Warhammer Fair trading or some other stuff like that. So there are ways of doing it. Or, just if you're on Twitter, put a call out on Twitter, be respectful of the groups. There are so many different Heresy groups, and all gaming things is the same, that you can see that same message appear 7 or 8 times. A lot of the actual Heresy groups don't really do trading. So just remember that. Also, pay by PayPal as a service. Now, it's generally up to you and them to decide, who pays the costs on that, and that's probably something you should work out before you go through with the trade. But to be honest, if I was selling something, I'd say buyer pays the costs if I wanted to do that. But just be a little bit aware. If you send something PayPal that's friends or family, then if it doesn't come through, you've got no recourse to get your money back. So when you're dealing with someone you don't know, just, even if it's a case of you have to pay the extra couple of quid to cover the cost, if that saves you getting your 80 quid back, if it falls through, they run off with it, then that's a better thing to do. So,
yeah, definitely. Sound advice there, Greg.
Yeah, well, it's sensible. You keep seeing people who get burned on it. And there are rogue types out there. There are just things happen as well. But, it's that little bit of protection. Which is cool. Okay, should we move into the news?
Let's do it.
So, what have Forge World been up to since last episode? Dreadnoughts and robots.
Yes.
So,
completely.
Was the Battle Automata actually was out last time we recorded, wasn't it?
I believe it was, yes.
So, very cool still. But we've had the Space Wolf Legion Dreadnought and the Thousand Suns Contemptor Dreadnought.
Yes, the 2 models that I think look absolutely ace.
I do. There's now a lot of people have differing opinions on the Space Wolf one, as we come to expect. First off, the wolf on the shoulder pad, completely removable, and that is a complete shoulder pad underneath it. So if you don't want the wolf pelt on there, you just take it off.
So it's not actually sculpted onto the shoulder pad.
No.
You have to put a different one on.
No, it is a piece that is sculpted to fit directly over the shoulder pad.
That is cool. I like that.
Very simple. So if you don't like that, which some people do, some people don't, take it off. There's some room work on there. Some people aren't a massive fan of that. If you don't want too much of it, you can take the knees down a little bit, maybe. But, I like it. I think it's cool. I think the helmet, as it were, in there is awesome. I'm not 100% sure about the weapon loadout. I might be buying a different gun.
They do love twin-linked heavy bolters, don't they?
It does look cool. And that claw is awesome. But yeah, I love it. I will be.
But who knows? That could be an awesome loadout in the new rule set. You don't know.
Well, yeah, who knows? No one knows. And then, of course, the Thousand Suns, a siren pattern contemptor. So all the bling, the curved blade, and an auto cannon. Again, this is amazing. This model. I really love. I mean, I like
one of my favourite models from the Weekender, actually.
Yeah, I like the original Thousand Suns contemptor. I like this even more. It's really cool. It's got that little pyramid type headdress type thing as well, which I think is awesome.
Loads going on it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's a fantastic model.
I think it was someone on Twitter. Was it the guy that runs the Forge World shop? James? Is it James who runs the Forge World shop?
James Bragg. I don't know if he runs it. He certainly works out there.
He put up a picture of the. He said, "Oh, everyone's going mad for Psychers." And he went, "But Blood Angel's got a Psyker Dreadnought," and I felt like replying with the picture of the Thousand Suns one and go, excuse me.
Yeah, you got one as well. So yeah, I mean, two fantastic models. You know, they're really good contemptors. They're about the price of a contemptor. It's just more of what we want. And again, it's another 2 releases as we've gone on about again. So just plug it away with some cool Hobbit releases coming as well. So, there's some really cool stuff going on in Forge World. Loving it. What else did they show? Did they show something else as well? Were they teasing us, or was that just with Forge World, with Lord of the Rings stuff?
I think there's definitely Lord of the Rings stuff.
Yeah, there's that dwarf pulling.
There's more White Dwarf.
We got
the bowl stuff.
Yeah, we got the White Dwarf. So we got the anniversary edition of White Dwarf coming, which is quite cool. The White Dwarf in power armor. He's not making his way quite yet to what we're doing. Oh, it was Magnus. That was what was shown. So Magnus is officially available at Warhammer Fest for the first time. Now, we talked about him briefly, didn't we, actually, last time, if I remember. This is a really well-organised part of the show. But some people have done some size comparisons. I'm not 100% sure. We're going to wait and see at Warhammer Fest exactly, kind of see him up close and personal to decide on that one. So,
all of the Primarchs have looked very different in real life than they have in the pictures as well, I've noticed.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things again. You've got a 3D model to photograph, and I don't think it's as easy as some people make it out to be. I do think GW could have done better in some of their cases of photographing stuff, but it's also a 3D model which needs to be photographed. So a little bit of one column.
I have suffered against the GW photographers, if you know, from all the Golden Demons, where they take your models and take a photo, and then you look at the photo and think, what have you done to that photo? You know, they can butcher anything, those photographers, but they have got better of late. And
yeah, I don't think it's easy.
It's not that easy, actually. If you get something, a decent model, and you try and take a good photo of it, even with a good setup, sometimes it can take lots of trial and error and shots, and it's not as simple as people probably think it is.
No, absolutely. So we'll give them the credit on that one, but I like it anyway. So,
now, remember we spoke about the base on
Russ,
and would it be matched in with Magnus? Any thoughts on whether that is still possible? Because it looks as though they've got a similar style of base.
I think, so they're not a fighting pose between them, but if you were to put them like a few inches apart, I think they work well. Yeah.
I'm of the same mind. I would have loved to have had
be a huge piece.
Dynamic piece between the two.
Magnus, Russ and the Wolves on.
Oh,
right?
Yes.
Go and commission one. If you want one, go and commission a piece which brings it all together. But I actually like the fact that Russ is full hunting, not striking a blow or anything. Because I think when you've got them so close, because it would have to be close, and they're big models, they would have to be striking each other. It would have to be similar to Fulgrim and thing. You would also need probably them to be slightly offset against each other as well, which could cause problems in having like, because Fulgrim's up in the air, isn't he? A little bit.
Yeah, he's sort of striking down. Ferris
Yeah.
is hitting up.
So
which does that.
it gives you the models in two different positions. Whereas if you did that again, everyone would just go, oh, it's a rehash of the same pose. So what you would have to have is like almost them circling each other. But then that means you're going to have potentially the models not centered on the base as much. So that wouldn't look as good. People have moaned about that. So I think in general it's just better that they've gone with what they've gone with. They very much, I'm pretty sure when you see one against the other, with a 4 or 5 inch gap between them, they'll look like they're facing off against each other.
So, yeah, completely. Yeah.
So yes, that'll be cool. We did have the list of authors going to Warhammer Fest. There's a lot on there, which is good. So there's going to be a lot going on at Warhammer Fest again. We're a bit unsure because like the tournaments are 4 games on the Saturday, 1 on the Sunday, right? Which is quite, they're going to power through the whole of Saturday.
Wow, that's a lot to do on Saturday, isn't it?
It is. And they start at like 10. So they're going to go on quite late. I can't remember exactly. A friend of mine's thinking about going. And then, they play a bit and hang around for awards and whatever on the Sunday. I'm actually contemplating buying a Saturday ticket now and popping up there. If he's going to be up there, he's going to have a hotel room. So it might be worth, on behalf of the show almost going up there for the 2 days. But there's going to be plenty of authors there as well. So it'll be interesting to see how different it is with everything that's going on there, and with the TV, Warhammer TV covering however they're going to cover what they're going to cover, and everything else as well. So I mean, who knows? It's going to be fun. It's creeping up now.
Definitely.
It is creeping up, and
very quickly.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And then books. So I got my Perturabo book.
Have you read it?
I'm, I don't know, about a third of the way through it.
Good?
Yeah,
Bad?
really good. So when the Primarchs were announced, the Primarch series, I think, quite a few of us were like, oh, cool, origin stories. And they're not all origin stories, as we've discussed before. In fact, no, so far we haven't come close to an origin story, really, in the Primarchs book. Perturabo has elements of that origin story. In the Angel Exterminatus, the book I never remember the name of, we see flashbacks of Perturabo for when he lands, and he's making his way and gets discovered on the planet. Well, there's a point where that stops, and the first chapter of this carries on from that point, and then there's 2 timelines. There's the timeline of him, being introduced to society and everything that goes along with that, and then on Olympia, and then another timeline that's much further into the future. Really good. Guy Haley writes really well. There's some really interesting pieces looking at different aspects of Perturabo, because very much right at the start, the humans that find him, the tyrant, is kind of testing him and showing him off a little bit as well, and actually, amongst all his weapons craft, all his architectural ability, his art, his fighting ability, they're like his biggest strength is his reasoning and his ability to, kind of do that kind of stuff. So, yeah, there's some interesting kind of bits where they put him against a priest, and they have kind of theological debate. Things like that. So yeah, it's a really interesting kind of look into Perturabo, from an early age. So yeah, very cool. And looking forward to finishing that off and then seeing what comes next, because yeah, devouring that. So hopefully, get that done soon. And I think that's about it for news.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's most things covered. Bar the big topic.
Yeah, let's do that now, shall we? So, if you don't know what we've been doing, 8th edition for 40k the new edition of 40k has been announced. And Warhammer community have been leaking information, they've been releasing information, and there was a question and answer session with Pete Foley and Andy Smiley as well. So
I even watched that, which was
I saw you. I saw you appear on there. I was watching bits of it in between journeys and stuff. So what we've got is on Warhammer Community, you can see the stat line that's going to be used, which is changed from the current stat line we know and love. We've gone to a hard to hit roll for weapon skill and ballistic skill, which actually is no different really than having a ballistic skill of 4. Because ballistic skill of 4
I did.
was a 3
honestly,
up.
when I first saw it, I thought, oh, how's this going to play out? Obviously, ballistic skill makes no real difference, does it? Because that's really all it was before.
Yeah, absolutely. Weapon skill.
And weapon skill, although I thought, okay, that's a bit of a change. Couldn't change, if say Marines always hitting on 3s and then you say a Primarch or something big goes into them and they hit on 3s, I thought, well, that could be a problem, but that those bigger characters are going to have probably like minuses to hit them, which probably will take it back to where it was.
I don't necessarily think that will happen. I think they will potentially have their wounds, their armor will be raised to a point where, okay, you've hit, because we've still got strength and toughness as numbered values. So we haven't got, and guns have strength as well. So we haven't gone full Age of Sigmar in that respect. So strength and toughness is going to play a part. So yeah, awesome. The Space Marines can hit a Primarch, but can they wound a Primarch? Very well. So they can just alter that in that respect. There can also be minuses, as you say, to hit. So weapon skill in combat was always a bit of a problem because it was 3 options.
Yeah, that was my thought as well. When I got annoyed about it, I thought, oh, this is going to be a pain. But then I thought, well, hold on, you only used to have 3+, 4+, 5+. Yeah. So and to get a 5+ was unbelievably difficult.
Yeah. So when Lehman Russell, when Fulgrim runs into a bunch of Imperial humans that have just been given a lasgun, not trained, he still only hits them on 3s. Yeah, there are ways to re-roll hits and things like that are built in, but they're actually not a huge amount of them. So, that has potential just to even that up a bit, which I think is good. As you say, there are plenty of ways to put pluses and minuses in that. So we were very much looking at a system which we know, we're peeking through holes. We're peeking through the window, but we're not seeing the whole picture of what we're looking at. So, yeah, we've got this stat line. Leadership's gone down and people are moaning at that, but we know that morale's changing. So, how that's going to work exactly, we need to work out. The weapons profiles have changed. So, things like a las cannon is, 1 strength 9 shot, does D6 wounds or something like that. Well, that means what that appears to mean under the wording is that it hits one model and that one model takes D6 wounds. So not like Age of Sigmar where they overrun, but actually it just kills that dude really good, well.
When I saw that and you saw me put a post up on Twitter, that very much made me feel like second ed again. Like when I used to play lots of second ed games. Because I remember firing things like multi-melters and it used to be like D8 wounds on a model and all this sort of stuff and it used to be that scale. Oh, it's a really powerful weapon. It does a lot of damage rather than just that one wound.
Yeah. So we're looking at a more elegantly designed second ed. So thinking about, or there are elements of second ed, should I say, because I think, you're only going to get D6s. Right? So
yes, they're not going to have that. I can't see them bringing in all other dice.
but there are ways to alter that as well. So, yeah, you've got the las cannon. So a Space Marine has got a 3-up armor save, and the las cannon's got -3 to its save. We're hitting one model with strength 9, so it's obviously strength 9 against toughness 4 or whatever it is. I think it was 4 still. The chances are that's going to be a very favourable roll, so it's probably going to wound. Then, -3 to the save. A Space Marine, might be able to roll a 6-up to save against a las cannon. I don't know. We don't know points. We don't know anything else. So whatever.
No.
Space Marine's got a chance to save against it. That's fine. Right. If that's a normal Space Marine, that las cannon kills him automatically because it does D6 wounds. if that's a character with, I don't know, 5 wounds, it's got a good chance of killing him. Well, that's not too dissimilar to kind of how we're looking at the moment. Terminators was one people pulled up. So a Terminator sits there with a 2-up save with 2 wounds, according to that profile as it stands. Again, the Lascan's wounding him easily. And people are like, well, there's no instant death. I'm like, no, but it's doing D6 wounds.
Yeah.
So that's almost the same. Actually, Terminators then stand up a little bit better, potentially against some stuff because it's some stuff they don't. Flamers then, which we're getting rid of templates, is another thing which a lot of people are upset about. I reckon within 3 or 4 months of 8th edition coming out, people will have forgotten. Or they'll be like, oh, templates were a hassle or took time.
I like templates, but I think it's just because I liked using them. I just enjoyed playing with them.
Have you ever played against someone with 6 quad launchers doing phosphax?
No, but then again, I always had a lot of templates in my army.
Okay, the odd template is fine and doesn't necessarily slow the game down. Although for me, it's like, oh shoot, where are my scatter dice? Okay, move around the table, place the template, roll the scatter dice, measure the scatter dice, have an argument over which way the arrow's going, because some people are useless at determining which, the arrow's pointing there and they're going 45 degrees off with their thing, right? Yeah. So instead, it's just like, okay, a flamer does D6 hits on the unit, so that's D6 hits. So that's not where the las cannon hits one dude for D6 damage. This is D6 hits doing 1 wound each. So
I really like the way that they've still kept the flavour, but then changed it to be, those sort of rolls and
So this
et cetera, which I thought was a great idea. But also, I think I can see speed-wise, it's all about making it more fluid, and that's a key example where they're going to be able to speed everything up by just that simple change.
Yeah, and it's not just the obvious answer is, okay, instead of placing this flavor template 8 times, trying to work out how many dudes I can hit with it and what have you. Yeah, in some situations it's going to be worse, but actually, is it a bad thing if stuff can get out of drop pods and not just get flamed to death straight away? Not necessarily. Right, so because that was a very kind of hit and miss thing that happened. So in this case, this guy's got 4 flamers, 4d6 hits. Cool, pick up that many dice, away you go, and that's quicker. However, it also means you might not have to worry so much about the placing of your models, so the movement phase speeds up as well. Because when you're playing an army that's heavy with templates, make sure they're all 2 inches apart, and and doing that. Well, that can really slow down the movement phase. So it's speeding up 2 aspects of the game. And in Age of Sigmar, those, cannons and mortars, they work well. They feel like what they should be doing. So, an artillery piece might get +2 to hit when he's firing at a unit of 20 or more models. Because it's that much easier to hit them. Or it might get extra hits when it's firing it. So it might do 2d6 against 20 or more models and 1d6 against less than 20. So there's lots of ways for them to bring that in. It can be things like d6 plus 3 wounds if they really want to. It could be a hard, just straight 3 wounds. It could be a straight 6 wounds, There's still a huge amount of granularity in that your different weapons, your different profiles, your different template types are still represented. So again, we don't have the full picture. What came out today? The Psychic Face came out today, which works similar to Age of Sigmar, but with changes. So it'll be a case of your Psychers choose a power to roll. That power has a target number or more than 1 on it. You roll 2 dice, you try and hit that target number. And then the psychic power has, it does whatever it does. So Smite, the one they showed, does D3 wounds. However, if you roll a 10 to cast it instead of a 5, it does D6 wounds. But it has to be targeted at the first model. Right, that's just 1 power. Right, they can do whatever they want with those powers. And that one was mortal wounds as well. So mortal wounds ignore armor saves and other saves. So, right, and that's one example. And then people are jumping on that. I'm like, but that's one example. You could have something a psychic power that hits every unit for D3 hits within a certain radius. and they can go granular with that. They can have loads of different casting values. They can then give, like, say, Eldar bonuses to cast psychic powers, +1s, +2s. So they can do all this stuff. And actually they could probably do it slightly easier because they've broken down the kind of rigidity of the model kind of stat line. So it's important to remember stat lines, special rules. We're not going to have unique special rules, a huge amount of them. What we're going to have is loads of abilities, probably, for units. So,
and will they be on? Do you think they'll be on a bit like Age of Sigmar? They'll be on the actual
on the war scroll or whatever they're going to call them. Yeah, I think they'll be on the units. So it'll be like, okay, you've taken a greater demon of Zinch, right? I suspect he's going to get bonuses to try and cast spells. They do in Age of Sigmar. They can in fact give bonuses to other wizards around them to cast spells in Age of Sigmar. So it gives you the feel that when you play Zinch, he's going to get some spells off. Well, that's not hard to port over in that style. Not saying it'll be exactly the same way, but in Age of Sigmar, right, the game's completely changed from Warhammer. However, if you play a Khorne army, it feels like a Khorne army. If you play an Orc army, which is, wants to get in combat and do the same thing, it feels very different from the Khorne army, even though it's moving forwards to get in combat. Yeah? And then if you play an elf avoidance army, that plays a different way. If you play a kind of an undead shambling horde, that feels very much like a shambling horde. So they can change the rules to make the armies fit the style of play they want. So in essence, you don't lose anything from your army. And in fact, sometimes they've made them feel more like you think they should play. So I would say, give it a go. I've seen some of those comments. Don't read the comments unless you're just doing it for a laugh, because there's a lot of salty people out there. There's a lot of people who aren't listening to what's being told to them, for starters, because a lot of the information that they're raging about is actually kind of there, and then they're not bothering to go and find it. There's people who just hate change, really hate change. Fair enough, but it's coming. And we're talking about this because, it's said that it's not going to be in Heresy yet, but it's
and the frustrating thing for me is when they did the Q&A, they had a question about it and they said, "Oh, we'll come to that later,"
and they never did.
And then they never did.
No, I mean, I've put feelers out to try and ask to get someone on here from Forge World at some point, because Heresy sometimes get left out of these things. So I'm like, right, I would love, at some point nearer the date that it's due to come out, to come talk to us, because I think the Heresy community needs a little bit more from that. And I know the guys are busy, right, at Forge World. Everyone in GW is busy trying to get this ready. They've got an Imperial Armor book that's coming out, which probably needs to be changed over to this new system. Plus all the units they already do for all the other Imperial Army books that have got to be ready for 8th edition launch. So it makes sense that Heresy's delayed a bit.
And it's easy for them to say, as they did in that notes, carry on using the previous version, because then it keeps everything running the same. Yeah. And
also as well, I think maybe, we've had a black book that came out 4 months ago, right? Give everyone a chance to play with that black book in 7th for like 7, 8, 10 months, whatever. I don't know. It's me spitballing. And then go, now we're changing edition. And they'll do updates and,
re-release every black book with the new rules.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just, no. But we've already had books that have gone out of date. Yeah, those first 3 books went out of date very quickly. Yeah.
Completely. And I think, this is where I see the benefit of the red books.
Yeah. Well,
because this is where you can do updates and change things and re-release things, and people use the red books now way more just for that reference, don't they? And up to date, because let's face it, those red books have superseded nearly all the black books, haven't they? There's been changes to stat lines, points values, wounds, all the way through those black books now. So if you're using the black books as this is gospel, you're going to make your life hard anyway.
Yeah, they are about those black books. I mean, you only have to look at it. The majority of it is fluff, right? They still have all that value as background, as source material, as everything else. Now, we don't know. I mean, do all the rules go free? Maybe. Maybe not. I don't know. We'll find out in due course. It's going to happen. You know, the change happens. Games go through new editions. Everything that I've seen so far, like, nothing worries me. There's nothing like tanks are going to get, like, they're going to have wounds. That bothers some people. It's hull points, okay? They just changing the head to hull points.
It's funny because I thought as soon as I heard that tanks had the same stat line as, you know, everyone else, I sort of went, that disappoints me. And then I thought, well, hold on, we've had hull points now for ages. And if you think that most vehicles have like 3 hull points, but then you could turn around and say, oh, it's now got 10 wounds. I think I'd rather have 10 wounds than 3 hull points.
Yeah. Well, what it allows is much more granularity. So your Rhino can have 5 wounds, right? Your Predator can have 7 wounds. Your Land Raider can have 10 wounds. Your Spartan can have 12, 13 wounds. Your Super Heavies can have 18 wounds. Yeah, but it allows for that granularity. It also allows, as they've said, as vehicles take damage, they will become less effective. I've said many times that my major issue with Super Heavies is they lose no effectiveness.
Yes,
well, under this system, give them a shed load of wound. They're going to have a good save. They're going to have a high tough. I suspect they're going to have a good save, high toughness, plenty of wounds. So actually, yes, your las cannon is going to hurt them. Your bolters can hurt them. They could ping off a sensor dish. They could, you could squeeze some shrapnel through a sight hole. Those kind of things could happen, but it's your las cannons and those kind of weapons that are going to take them down still. But what you might get is finishing off a Spartan with a bolt gun, but hey, who cares,
Your Sergeant fired the last shot of the game, which was a bolt pistol into a Spartan, and it blew it up.
Yeah. But it's things like, that could hit but that could have hit, once it's damaged enough, that could hit an exposed flipping, connection or whatever. I mean, I played at the South Coast GT and I killed RK on Lord of the End Times, or whatever he's called, Grand Marshal of the Apocalypse, or whatever he's called. I killed him with a 40-point Griffhound. But that's not because the Griffhound killed him, that's because I'd taken 19 wounds off with other stuff first, and the game was in the bag, so I just kind of went, I'll take it off with that. And, hit, wounded, and got a lucky roll through. Those things, it means those things will happen. We were laughing and screaming about it because it was so ridiculous. But that's not that Griffhound killing that model. That is that Griffhound being the last piece of the puzzle where all the really good stuff killed that model. So.
And your glass.
And my glass. Apologies for that. So yeah, but it allows, as I say, it allows for granularity in that. Now, might there be issues with it? Yeah, there might be, but I haven't got a problem with it. If all of a sudden everyone's Typhons, they have to worry about them getting damaged, that's a good thing in my book, because Super Heavies were an issue. And Spartans.
Yeah, I think they were. I think they were overly powerful, and it was a little bit out of balance with Super Heavies and bits and pieces like that, because you could play a game where you set up and just went, well, this isn't going to work because I can't kill that. Yeah. Or I've got one unit that can hurt that. Oh, right, you've killed it.
And it almost became binary for a lot of tanks. It's like, do my guns kill it? Because if they don't kill it, they don't do anything. Whereas now, okay, I fire X amount of las cannons at this tank. I know it's going to hurt it. So because you'd think sometimes, is it worth firing these las cannons at that? Because there's a slim chance that I blow it up. If I don't blow it up, am I doing anything with those shots? Where all of a sudden now it's like, actually, if I take 6 wounds off of it, that means it shoots less or moves less or whatever. That's worth it. So it becomes more likely that you can do that. So you feel like you've got more options. And all I can say is, because I was surprised. I thought the unit structure or the stat line was going to change more than it did. I was taken a little bit by surprise on that. But there are definitely elements of Age of Sigmar coming through here, which is actually, it's just elements of modern game design. So, and modern games have moved towards this sleeker thing. No one's playing, very few people are playing Mech Warrior now, where it's to the point where you're, no, this one point of damage on his left arm, forearm, 1 point of damage on this, and I have to put this, and you're keeping track of everything going forwards. Like, the complicated games are still played, but there's much less of them. We're moving more and more to a much more elegant, smooth play style of game. And Age of Sigmar is booming under that system. It feels like a war game. Are there issues with it? Yeah, but actually, you know what? A lot of those issues tend to be units or combinations of units. So if it's really that bad, they can just release a war scroll next week, a change, and go, right, we've changed that war scroll. This interaction doesn't work. Or they can go, you know what? Yeah, it makes them really good, but we'll wait until the next General's Handbook, readjust their points. Or we'll wait till the next time we have them in a book and we'll take away that one special rule which allows those things to happen. So you're going to get more regular updates, probably. You're going to get, a lot more feel. There's going to be, if they see that, like, something's not being taken, again, they can just throw that upgrade on there and go, right, well, that's not being taken, so how do we make it better? You know, there's loads of stuff I think to be positive about. It's coming, embrace it, and try it. Again, just try it. Before.
Well, my big thing for this, this changeover is the one thing I love about a change, like a complete rewrite of the rules, is number one, it's a level playing field. Everyone is coming in at an entry level and has to learn it all, learn combinations, what work, what doesn't work. But also, it's just such an opportunity to rebalance everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and start and go, no, actually, no, we're not going to have that because that was too powerful. So we're going to tone that down. And they can tinker with everything rather than constantly trying to, keep trying to patch leaks and going, well, that doesn't really work. Okay, up that points and, okay, take a wound off that. They can go, right, let's start again. What's this going to do? What's this going to do?
And part of the problem was you had to wait X amount of years before they could get back to reviewing it. Because once you start reviewing it regularly, you've got to maintain that. Whereas with the system they have, they can take an individual data sheet and change that. And
yes, then it becomes, rather than the whole rule set or whole universal
and
rule.
If it's free rule set, then that means they could just do it without everyone moaning about having to pay for it. So yeah, it becomes really easy. I sat there, one of the serving girls at South Coast GT was like, I don't get it, I don't get this game. And I said, well, actually, it's fairly simple to get the basics of what you want to do, and then the complexity comes in as you move forwards and you understand that interactions work. I said, if you have someone that the important thing is to have someone to teach you it properly. And she was like, oh, okay, and kind of ignored me. And then she sat down and watched the game for 20 minutes and went, I actually think I understand this game. I'm like, you probably do. It's as simple as you can move here, because there's no, because it's 40k style with Age of Sigmar, you can move, any direction you want up to that range. Okay, you can fire your gun at anyone within range. What do you need to hit? 3+. Brilliant. Roll a 3. You hit. To wound roll. Obviously, this one's going to have some kind of chart, but that's only one chart then, So, okay, need to learn that. Brilliant. What does he need to save? 2 up. Bosh. Okay, that takes a wound off. All right. That is really simple. Now, when you add in special rules, that becomes like, oh, I see, I can use this to do this, to open this up. Right, that's brilliant. But actually, this woman sat there, so it was girl, she was quite young compared to me. She sat there for 20 minutes and went, yeah, I think I understand most of the game. It's like, well, you do. Now it's just adding on different stuff. So when someone comes to the club and goes, I want to learn 40k, in the future, or I want to get into Heresy, it's going to be like, right, well, let's just throw a few units down, and it's going to be easy to teach you enough to see whether you want to play it or not.
Yes, yeah, and I think it's crucial, because if the games do become too over the top and complex, you don't get many new people come into it, because it's just too daunting and way too complicated to grasp, and get all of the rules and all of the background.
Yeah, it definitely becomes a barrier. Also, I found with Age of Sigmar that it's kind of easier to play a much wider range of points values, because you've got, it's different to 40k in that respect, But because it's so much simpler in that, it's like where you can just take some troops, just use them against each other, and it kind of works better. So it'll be interesting to see if 40k works that way as well. But yeah, from everything I've seen so far, I'm getting kind of excited to see the full package, because again, there's a lot there we don't know. The rumours of what 12-page rules book, but again, with complexity coming in other ways, that's fine. There's a lot of cool stuff happening. There's a lot of people moaning about it. You know what? Whatever. I've seen like the Warhammer community getting excited about 40k, which is quite a big thing when, you know, it was very much, when you're on the tournament scene, it can be very much like when we play Warhammer, they play 40k, and vice versa. But there's a lot of excitement about, okay, this summer, what army am I going to collect? And it's bringing people back who haven't played 40k in a long time, who were put off by all the, okay, you can do what, and how does this work? And okay, I hear Eldar and Tau are the things to do. Okay, well, fine. Okay, there's going to be an army in the new edition which is better than the others, but how long that lasts, it's going to be a different story.
And with new stuff coming out, and
there's so much cool stuff coming. I have trust in GW. Yeah, I mean, anything else to add before we... I mean, there's going to be more news out by the time this is released, probably.
Yeah, and that's what's quite cool as well, is every day we're getting a little update and a little snippet of more information. So it's nice that it's not the old sort of, no, we can't tell you anything about this. It's like slowly being introduced, which is a nice way to digest it.
Saw people complaining about that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's like, well, why didn't you tell us the release date? And it's like, well... This is more than they've ever done before. Like, the release date will come. Yeah.
Also, the release date may still be fluid, because it may still be like, okay, well, are we doing it this weekend or that weekend? Or,
no, they're pretty set. They're pretty set because they have to do it in between other models releases as well. And those model releases are worked on so far ahead. They've known what release date we're going to have now. Normally we get an edition change in the summer. So the chances are, I mean, there was some talk about a 2-week pre-order period in July. I don't know how true that is, but that's what I've heard, seen people talk about. But, you know, they're releasing new information. They're going to tell you what's coming up. They publicise something that they always did, which they never publicised. If you've purchased a rules book for 40k, in the 8-week period, they've extended it from 4 to 8 weeks, the 8-week period before the live Q&A session, and you have the receipt, you can get a voucher to the value of that rule book if you're not happy about the fact that your rule book's going to be out of date. Right? That's great. Yeah, so there'll be, I bought my rule book 10 weeks before, and I'm like, well, you know, great, you bought your PlayStation a month before they bought a new PlayStation out. Yeah, that's life, isn't it? To a point.
Yeah, and also, let's face it, it's 8 weeks before the Q&A, which was this week.
Yeah.
So it's not been released yet, so you've still got time that rulebook is technically valid anyway. And you could be talking a few more months yet until it's released. You know, you've got loads of time.
If you moan about that and say, well, it should have been start of the year, then you might wait 6 months without any new releases.
Yes, yeah.
And what are you going to complain? You're going to play and complain you haven't got any toys to play with then, aren't you? So there is no win for GW there. They can still, and actually they're selling off their Imperial Armor books because they're going to be out of date. They're doing deals on them, you know, because those things aren't going to be, but they've still got great fluff in them. Even the army books have still got really good stories and background. So there's still a reason to own those. I know people who own all their old collection of books from like second edition. Every edition they've gone through.
Yeah, and some people are completely, that like that sort of, well, I've got everything for that, that particular set, then they can go out and pick out a load of cheap ones.
Yeah, there's reference material as well. So, you've got all that to play with. So, yeah, I'm excited. Saw some people asking about FAQ answers from Forge World for 7th edition. Can't see that happening. What's the point if they're going to move to 8th edition? What other things did I see? Oh, it would be nice if they could release all the characters and stuff for the 3 missing legions. It's like, well, they're moving to 8th edition, so I understand what people mean. If they wanted to carry on playing the old edition, they'd like to have... Yeah, I think a small group of people will carry on playing the old edition. I think you're going to hamstring yourself doing that, because I'm going to move on. You know, when the PlayStation came out, my Mega Drive went away. You know, yeah, I might.
Although there are people now that would pay you money for your Mega Drive and would want to play it.
No, because I want to play it every now and then as well. But I'm sitting there with my Mega Drive in the thing, and I've got a PlayStation 4 out here. Now, I might bring that Mega Drive out for the odd day here and there, but am I really going to want to play Road Rash 2 over, like, Grand Theft Auto 5? Not for a huge amount of time. So, you know, that's just life. But, you know, some people do. As you say, some people will want to play the older stuff. Cool. Full power to you. If you can find other people to play it with you. But most of the time, no, the vast majority of the community just moves on or moves away. And they're your options, really. But I think it's going to be a great game. I think it's going to be a real fun game. And I can't wait for Heresy to move over to it. I think, you know, Heresy, for all that chat about how it's such a balanced game and everything, I don't think it is. I think a lot of that balance comes from self-regulation.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, I think it's very easy to create armies that are just hit or miss in terms of like rock, paper, scissors, that kind of thing. And I don't consider that a balance, to be fair. And that might not be the case moving forwards as well. It will still be a bit of regulation, I think, because, you know, within any system you can go for all the good stuff and for all the not so good stuff. But it's going to be interesting for Forge World. I think they're going to have a busy few months getting that ready. But
I think they're going to have to take some time on it. I think that's why they have released that statement, because it's not going to be a 2-week fix.
No.
For them, they've probably got as much, if not more, work to do than the main 40k guys. Apart from it's a massive task. Think how long it's taken them to compile all those.
They're not a very big.
All those books.
They don't employ huge amounts of people. You know? So, they've got X amount of staff to do all that. And they've got to make each legion play the way each legion should fight.
Yeah, they got to try and check it, make sure it makes sense. You got to make sure that, you're not making one too powerful. They got so much to do to bring that all in line. But hopefully, maybe we see a few, maybe a couple of condensed black books that just have all the new, rules in, all the new, red books that cover all the,
They've confirmed that 40k's got an app coming, similar to the Azir app for Warhammer, which can have all the battle tomes on there. So maybe we see that come out as well, and an army builder within it. I would like them to see them put barcodes on their product, or include a one-use barcode with it to, if you buy the book, to unlock all that content that's behind a paywall in the app, because I think you should do that.
Yeah.
But you can use, if you pay for the £1 a month or whatever it is for the army building app, it allows you to build the army with those units. You just can't look them up. So you can still utilize it in that respect. So yeah, there's cool stuff going on. So yeah, at the end of the day, I have faith in GW and Forge World to make a game that I will enjoy. So crack on, do it.
Yeah, pull your finger out.
Cool. So this did turn into a really long session, but I think 8th edition news is quite important to chat about. And as I say, we'll see in a few months, like, the full scope of it. And then it'll be interesting to see then moving forwards how Heresy's affected. Interesting times, as the saying goes. Brilliant. Okay, we'll take a break and we'll come back after the music. Okay, so with Michael again, this time we're going to look at the other Horus Heresy books that are in the Hatchette Partwork series, what we've got up to. Again, these won't be a hugely detailed, but we will go a little bit more into it than, like, I think, there'll be some details, so yeah, it's that balance that we try and get without giving away everything, unless we're doing an in-depth review. But We did that for the first Heretic, which was one of the first book, or the first book that they put out. And now we've got about 16, I think, something like that in the series. And some really good titles in there, and these three Heresy ones, which are Horus Rising, Mechanicum, and No Fear. So, how are you, Michael?
I'm very well, thanks.
Excellent stuff. This is revisiting something a few of these I haven't read in a while.
No, definitely. I mean, in fact, some of the 40k ones I haven't read at all, so it's been an enjoyable process so far. But I mean, I haven't read Horus Rising, I don't know, 5-6 years, but it's just such a cracker. I think it's. I was slightly surprised, in fact, that they didn't do Horus Rising as the first Heresy novel. Obviously, the first novel in the series at all was the first Heretic, which you guys have covered. I mean, how did you feel about that being the first in the series?
It was certainly interesting. I wonder if they went for something that people maybe hadn't as many, that maybe not as many people had read, because I think a lot of people, there's a lot of people who started the Heresy and then kind of realised that, how big it was going to be. I don't want to keep up with that. I think a lot of people have read those first 3 books. So maybe it was a bit of that. Maybe it was they wanted Aaron as the first one. I don't know, really. Yeah,
possibly. I mean, I still sort of think in terms of selling figures, Dan's probably the big seller for Black Library. I wonder if the first Heretic was chosen because it's sort of, if you strip everything back, it is almost where it all began. If the events of the first Heretic hadn't happened, the Heresy potentially wouldn't have happened. So I sort of feel like whoever's been leading on this went, you know what, let's throw a bit of a curveball to start off with and go for what really is the root of things, so that the long-term fans will go, oh yeah, okay, I get what you're doing there. And at the same time, deliver something that, like you say, maybe not everyone's read, and an Aaron novel will go, he's got that sort of sales appeal.
Yeah, you might be absolutely right. It'll be, I doubt we'll ever know, but it'll be really interesting to see kind of who's the biggest name in terms of sales. We saw how quickly Black Legion, Talon of Horus sold, and that doesn't happen quite as often now, where people are, clamouring to get the first edition.
No, it doesn't. I mean, I think there's multiple factors for that, isn't there? There's the fact that there's just been so many limited editions.
And just so many book releases, period, I think.
Well, yeah, definitely. I mean, if you look at the Vaults of Terror, so as we're recording this, that the limited edition came out yesterday. I've got it up on my iPad here. The Black Library website says fewer than 150 copies left. Now, that's quicker than any of the limited editions have sold for the last 3 or 4. But the previous few have sold well, but haven't flown out the door like Talon of Horus did. But then there's been so much since Talon of Horus. Now, I think what will be a really interesting yardstick is if Warmaster, presumably Warmaster will get a limited edition release of some sort in December when that comes out.
I mean, that's got the added advantage of being a part of a very long-running series as well. But yeah, as you say, it'll be an interesting thing to see. I know there's a lot of Chris Wright fans out there. Is Chris's Carrion? No, Carrion. Which one's which now? I'm trying to remember.
Carrion Throne's the one that's literally come out this weekend.
Yeah. And that, I think, a return to the old school style of looking into the depths of the Imperium as well might have an effect on that. But yeah, absolutely, it's good to see that that's happening. I actually think recently, where things have settled down, the limited numbers they put up seem to be about right. Because they sell the first half very quickly, and then they're there for a couple of weeks, and then they kind of disappear.
Yeah,
which is not a bad thing for them, really.
No, definitely. I suspect people probably got a bit enthusiastic when Aurelian happened and that sort of thing. Aaron crashes Black Library, all that sort of stuff. And the fact that it settled down, like you say, so the hardcore fans get theirs. Cool, you've got it, you're sorted. And everyone else has a little bit of time to figure out the money and save up or get prepared and that sort of thing.
Well, with the coming soon as well, that can change that as well, because we're more aware now of a couple of months advance. I still think that when the Black Legion second book comes out, and as you say, Warmaster, you're going to have to be online straight away. That's just the nature of things. There are always going to be the outliers that break the system, as it were, if people want to use that term. So yeah, but do you then print extra? How many of them do you print extra, or is it just 4,000 fans going for 3,000 books? So it's a balance.
I guess we could talk about this for a whole episode, really. Yeah. There's the period of time where they went limited time edition, so everyone who wanted one could get one, and that seemed quite egalitarian, but has fallen by the wayside to be replaced once again with the limited numbers.
I know. Towards the end of that, they were getting the same sort of numbers anyway, but you had to wait a month and a bit to get your book. So it's a balance of things.
It certainly is. But I guess we can move back off the first heretic and onto Horus Rising.
Indeed.
I think it's just such a no-brainer, isn't it? Yeah. I think. So what was it? It was the 5th issue of the Hatchette series. I think that's about right. You do the first heretic, so it's a Heresy series to start it off. A few classic 40k books, and then boom, in with the beginning of the Heresy. I was there the day Horus slew the Emperor. Let's get back to the beginning.
Yeah, and a book that's held in high regard for the quality of it as well. Not just the fact that it was the first, but how well written it was, how well kind of formulated it was in what's going on, because they're two different things. And Dan doing what Dan does best, throwing you straight into this action, confusing people, and then slowly pulling us back out of that, and then telling us this, the real first kind of background of what becomes such a huge event.
That's right. And it's sort of funny to think, isn't it, that that was published now over 10 years ago. I mean, that's kind of crazy. That the Heresy is just this fundamental part of the hobby now, whether you're a reader only or a gamer or whatever. And it wasn't there 10 years ago when Horus Rising was published. None of that was there. No one knew what was going to come. No one knew what to expect. And it's amazing how well it stands up.
Yeah, definitely. You're absolutely right on that one. And its use of, people say that Dan, some interesting concepts on how Dan writes, particularly with Space Marines and humans, but the kind of change of style of having these humans looking at these Space Marines the whole time, what that brings, particularly when the Primarchs are then involved. So you've almost got like these, you've got the humans looking at Space Marines looking at Primarchs, is the main kind of drag of it.
Yeah, definitely.
Creates this, carry on.
That's really informed, I think, everything that's come since 40k and Heresy. Go back to before Horus Rising, and Space Marines were written in a different way. We now think of Space Marines informed in the light of the Heresy. And obviously, different authors write them in different ways, and 40k has to portray them in a different light because they are different. But I think I certainly have different expectations these days, and a huge part of that came from, like you said, that stylistic choice to go, well, let's really show what it means to be a Space Marine by looking at how bloody scary they are from the eyes of a human, whether that's scary in terms of action and being in combat, or scary just in terms of being so sort of far removed.
Yeah, absolutely. And there were little bits of it beforehand, but this really hammered it home. I think even the Space Marine, the computer game, like when you were running through that, just some of the kind of the guardsmen in that, their responses to you as you ran past them. But it's been focused on more. And so it's got us back to the fact of, Space Marines in 40k, the game, have become the norm. Right, they're not the norm. They are not the norm. The humans should be the norm. And then Space Marines are, however many steps above humanity. And Horus Rising shows us that. It also shows us a Primarch.
Yeah, for the first time ever.
Yeah, as in not a demon Primarch. Yeah, you can understand demon Primarchs because they've been changed and everything else, but this is just this demigod in its, in its base state, as it were. And that's a crazy thing to get your head around, really. It must have been quite a challenge to write those first few books to get that right.
Yeah, I'm sure, and not just showing the Primarch, because this wasn't Great Crusade era Primarchs. This was Horus at just before his moment of turning. So Dan had to get that, wow, how do I portray a Primarch and how do I show the impact they have on everyone around them? But also, he had to show the tragedy of Horus. So he couldn't jump straight into Horus as the big evil bad guy, because then there's no pathos, there is no tragedy. So Horus had to be lovable. And I think the way that Dan, pitching it from the Sons of Horus's perspective, the sort of hero worship, the godlike worship really that he received from his sons, builds that up so well in conjunction with just wow, I've never seen a Primarch before, which must have been incredibly difficult to do, but just lends it a real power, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And, the initial we had as you say, the 6319 is the opening of the book, and the going in, and the day that Horus slew the Emperor and all that showed us not only all that, but also at the same time showing us that the Great Crusade had kind of many layers to it and was viewed upon very differently. And in fact, actually, kind of one of the stories of Horus Rising is, is the Great Crusade. Is it still the same thing it was when it started? Should it be the same thing it was when it started? How do we view the Imperium now that it's growing to conquer the galaxy, and other questions in that? And then we move on from that to Murder, where we get to see Horus in a way which pulls back some layers, but also shows why he was chosen as War Master and how the other legions react to him as well. And that's the first half of the book, very well done on setting this character up to live as the name Horus War Master. It's and why he was chosen, and then conversely, 3 books later, see how far he's fallen, which is very, very good, very good.
yeah, for sure. I mean, Horus Rising is just one of those stories that we could do an entire full episode on it, because there's so much that's interesting there. There's so much, the first time Loken and co sort of come across this idea of a demon, the secular viewpoint of the Imperium in its Great Crusade era. The first time it's really been challenged. There's so much of interest, like you said, there's the stuff on Murder. There's so much fun there. It's sort of weird because it's hard to imagine not having read it.
Yeah, absolutely. Trying to remember a time back before we knew just how important those lodges were. Now, they'd been mentioned before, but Horus Rising gave us a glimpse of how insidious that they were, even in their most kind of benign state. So, and the problems that easily arose, and all of a sudden these things where you had snippets started to make a little bit more sense. And it brought all of that together, and we knew, anyone who's in the Heresy knows that the word bearers were already on the path, and Erebus particularly was out there campaigning, as it were. And I remember reading this a second time, or I think I was listening to it the second time after reading it, and getting to that bit, and it's just like, right at the end, at the end of the book where they're with the Interact, it's like, don't do it, Eric. What would have happened if Erebus had been caught or stopped in some way? And that fundamental moment there was possibly one of the major tipping points for the whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Horus Rising had to have that, because it's that real frustrating tragedy sort of moment. It's like reading Romeo and Juliet, where you're just thinking, no, just be more patient. What if this had just happened? And in fact, when I first, back in the day when it was first published, I was really resistant to this, because I was just thinking, well, but I know what happens in Horus Heresy.
Yeah.
I don't need to read this. And it was really Dan's ability, Dan's skill and craft as a writer that I think gets past that, because in other hands, it could have just been, well, yeah, I mean, I could have figured that out for myself. But that tragedy, because Horus is so well written, because you want him to not turn, it's just so well done.
Yeah, it definitely gave the Primarchs more depth. These aren't just War Masters. These aren't just, killers and that. They are, supreme kind of beings. And Horus, right at the end of this book, starts to get it in a way that no other Primarch really got it, I think, because of situation, circumstance, whatever. But he was getting to the point of, hold on, actually, do we have to keep going the way we're going? Can we not change? Can we not become something greater? And it's at that moment where everything falls apart, which is perfect, because it is so, and I say, just going through that second bit again, it's like, a few more days. What would a few more days difference have made? But, what happens, and it goes on its way. But it does. It sets up so many characters we now know and love. So many instances getting to see Abaddon in his pre-chaos state, which sometimes doesn't look too dissimilar from his chaos state. Therein seeing like how easy it is for some of them to fall, because they were actually almost there, and then to see the stoicism of Loken in the face of what's going on, but not knowing what to deal with it, not knowing how to handle what's going on. And of course the little snippets with the Lectitio Divinitatis, and the Saint, and, all those things starting off, which are going to thread through the books. And at that time, again, we had no concept of what we were going to be finding with 40 odd books later and everything else. But, the excitement at the time was huge.
Yeah, definitely. And it's crazy to think that at the time, there was no conception, I think, even for Black Library and the authors, of how big this was going to grow to. So Dan was throwing all this stuff in, and the impression I get is that it was very closely written with the other people involved at the time, Graham and co. But they were putting all this stuff in, going, well, I don't know, hopefully we'll get to follow up on this. But they can't possibly have known that we were going to get to 40, 50, 60 books. Talking to Dan recently, I get the clear impression that was not, that there wasn't there wasn't really a full plan for this. It was, we'll do the opening trilogy and then let's see what we can get away with. But he just threw all this stuff in, and like I say, there's so many little bits, so many things that then became really important strands for the whole series, or at least for the first sort of half of the series. Some of those we've seen less of as the scope has widened, but I'm sure we'll see them coming back in.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be, as we get towards the end, I think some of the bookends are going to reflect the opening, for sure, because there is so much, you're right. I mean, it must be quite nice in a way to have, the plan of the series of books already in place. The overall plan was there. As we say, we know what happens in the Heresy. There's a lot of bits to fill in, but even at that point, before knowing how many books, what was going to go on, Dan can put stuff in like, I was there the day that Horus slew the Emperor, because you can almost know that at the end of it, you can reverse that line.
Yep.
And it bookends it all. So you can set those little things up, with some knowledge. But yeah, as you say, working very closely with Graham particularly, I'm not 100% sure moving on, but obviously had to work closely with, Ben Counter, did the third one.
Yeah, that's right.
But yeah, started a kind of collaboration thing which hadn't been done before, which went on to, be worked on even more for Prospero Burns and Thousand Suns, which really benefited from these two books being written very closely together, I believe. So yeah, Horus Rising is one of those books, it's always going to be iconic because it was the first, but actually it does live up to being the first book, which doesn't always happen.
No, that's right. But I think that you've hit a really interesting point there. The fact that it is both iconic and the opening of something, because I think that's sort of what this Hatchette series is trying to do. I think it's trying to show iconic books. So, we've got the Eisenhorn stuff in there. There's the Uriel Ventris series, some of Gav's really old stuff, that sort of thing. Some of these absolute classic iconic books, but there's also the sense that is really delving into the different elements of 40k, so the different races, the different sort of styles of story. And Horus Rising basically ticks both of those boxes, whereas the next one, Mechanicum, sort of primarily focuses on, it's just bringing another faction into the Heresy, which is not, I shouldn't say just, but that's what that one's doing.
Yeah, the iconicness of that thing is not there. When you think of the Heresy, you don't think of, the war on Mars as being kind of, it happened, but it hasn't got those same attributes that, that Prospero has, that Calth has, that all that has. Graham had to do a very different job with Mechanicum, to create something that actually ended up being just as kind of intriguing and deep and worthy as the other books in the series.
Yeah, that's right. And to be fair, we hadn't really seen that much of the Mechanicum. Certainly hadn't in the Heresy, and maybe I'm forgetting things, but that I felt reading Mechanicum that this was a glimpse of something that really I hadn't read much about in 40k. And so it was fascinating from that perspective, because Graham just got to go a bit crazy and show us all these cool things we'd not seen before. Yeah,
in most literature we've seen a Magos or two, and some servitors and things like that, and we know from Epic and from little snippets that they're a Skitarii. We've known about the Knights. He drew on those classic images that do appear. So the Knights, the Titans. And the Magos is within that, but yeah, that whole society of Mechanicum, of Mars, and the kind of, the intricacies and nuances that occur there. It's almost like, you've never been to India before, say, and you've got an idea of what India is, and then you go there and realise, actually, I've got a really oversimplified vision of what is a very complex country.
Yeah, I think that's a good analogy.
Yeah, and Graham managed to do that with these different, tech priests doing different things and conflicting ideas within a kind of a really interesting society in terms of how far do you push things, because new is bad, and then there's the bad stuff which is also bad, but people who are inquisitive and want to push boundaries as well. So yeah, it was a great view into the depth, and it, not in the style of, we're not getting into the intricacies of the Imperium per se. This is still Mars and it's still grandiose. But because it's new, it still feels like you're exploring.
Yeah, definitely. And that's really interesting, the idea of sort of exploration, because Dan, for example, is really well known for his world building. That's a huge part of what people like about Dan's writing. And Graham, sort of prior to this, it's not that he couldn't do it by any stretch of the imagination, but he wasn't renowned for that. Which he sort of became a bit more later. He really took the Mechanicum and then took it to 40k, didn't he? He wrote his Of Mars trilogy and that sort of thing. But Mechanicum was just this, wow, yeah, he really has delved into this. Like you said, he's got to show this complex, faceted society. And I think it had to be like that. But if it had just been tech priests that we'd already seen before, we wouldn't have had the same power. But he really did a good job for that. And I think it's a good reminder that it's not just Dan who has a monopoly on world building.
No, you're definitely right on that one. And also again utilising the humans that were brought in for their skill sets to again create a humanity where the Martians are something other than human, because their repression of all their feelings and everything else, which still show through every now and then, but you would get a very stale book if you just had Martians talking to Martians. You can read a short story of that, but pushing it too far becomes, very dull, and you'll lose an interaction. But by having humanity in that, it again allows another window into what's going on.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess I don't know if you felt the same way, but I sort of feel like Graham did a good job of showing that they have changed. So the Mechanicum in the Great Crusade area, in Heresy area, were, they did do that sort of thing. They tried to focus on the machine and repress the humanity, but they maybe hadn't got as far down the path as they have by the time of 40k. So they were clearly recognizable, but they were the predecessors, and that's got to be quite tricky because they don't. I don't think you can be like they are. So I don't think you can show the difference between them like you can show the difference between Heresy era Space Marines and 40k era. It's slightly different because of the nature of the Mechanicum, but I think he did a good job of that. And it is just sort of, oh yeah, I can see how they got to where they are now. If you see what I mean.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, absolutely. And that's been built upon by the 40k writers as well. To take what was written with Mechanicum, what's been developed in the Heresy, and push that on further. So they've fleshed out Mars in 40k, which is great to see and shows the worth of, going back and looking at the beginning, and how that can influence what's come on, even just from a creative viewpoint for writers. I would say I mentioned the fact that he brought the Knights in. He obviously looked at Epic and, what do people love about Mars? Titans. That's what we think about straight away is Titans.
But, for sure.
But those Knights were, people were talking about, there's a book called Mechanicum. I hope we get the Knights. And then these iconic things from the game Epic, which, by that point there were plenty of people in the hobby who'd never even seen Epic, heard of it, and it was like, what's these? Oh, there's these really cool things we used to have in Epic, and now they're on the tabletop everywhere, in their multiple different forms. But that creates another level of humanity as well, because the pilots aren't down that road. They interface with robots rather than changing themselves.
That's right.
But also a different viewpoint when they're in their Knights as well. So you've got a grand, when you go from Titans to Knights to tech adepts to the humans to the beings we get in the cave at the end. There's a lot of different stuff going on. We get a real interesting kind of multi-layered view of Mars.
And that, you mentioned grand there, that sense of grandeur, I think, is a trademark of the Heresy, that things were bigger and bolder because the Imperium hadn't descended into this sort of stagnation that it is in 40k. So there is, through all the best Heresy books, that sense of, oh, look at all these cool things going on. There's just so much.
Yeah. It gives you that kind of feeling of, oh, there's so much hope in this book. Oh, I know how it ends.
Yeah.
And within that, it gives you that absolutely, again, that feeling of what could have been had they not descended, how, even the Primarchs, there's a certain amount of humanity in them, how humans always seem to end up kind of hurting themselves in that respect, can never quite get along enough to make it, and Chaos playing its part in that as well, obviously. But, yeah, Mechanicum, for me, once it came out, was for a while the top book in the Heresy, because of all those reasons, because of things like the new sphere. They were pushing on technological boundary. The fact that, big forges built in volcanoes, the glimpses into the history of the Emperor, with the vaults of Moravec, I think it is, and then the labyrinth as well, and the suggestions, more history of the Emperor potentially, and those little links to stuff that's been in the, been drip fed in the canon as to little hints and tips about what may be going on Mars in 40k, and to show that actually it goes way back beyond 30k as well. There's a lot of depth in that book, and also the kind of the aspects of Lovecraft, and the style of looking at what is going on within the warp, say, and other certain aspects, very Lovecraftian themes going on, which I love as a background kind of theme. They fit so well, and we know that 40k's borrowed from Moorcroft, Lovecraft, you name it. They've borrowed from all of them over the years. When they set it up back in the 80s, that it's great to have them just bubbling under the surface the whole time, so you can see that.
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned that for a while Mechanicum was your top Heresy book. Just out of interest, maybe you've covered this before. Where does that stand now? Like, how does Mechanicum compare with some of your other favourites?
Still up there. Still up there. I think the quality of writing's got better, and that's even from people who wrote the early ones. So I think Graham's writing now is better than it was then. I think Chris Raitt, Aaron, and a few others are up, if not above it, certainly alongside it. It would be in the top 10.
Okay.
It probably would be pushing on the top 5.
Wow, okay.
I would
had a big impact on you then.
Yeah, I would have to sit and maybe it's something worth doing actually on the show. You know, for me, I think Prospero Burns is the top. Well, actually, now I said that, I was just remembering Master of Mankind, Scars, and Path to Heaven are both fantastic. Praetorian of Dawn, you know, John's come in and smashed it with Praetorian of Dawn, and that's, you know, without going back and looking at the old ones that I really loved as well. But I remember standing in GW and someone was asking about books, and I pulled out Fulgrim, Mechanicum, what's it called? Defenders of Oath 1, and something else, and going, yeah, these are 4 of my favourite books, and they were all Graham books. And it was, you know, at that time, it just so happened that way. He was writing stuff that I really loved. There was some stuff of his that I'm not a massive fan of. I found a bit, less engaging, shall we say. Not necessarily poor, because other people really love them, but those 4 books, when he's on form, I think he's really, really good.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree with you there.
So yeah, that's something to write down. Maybe I'll do my top 10 or top 5 books, or review the list of, be interesting to see how easy that is making them.
Yeah, I mean, you could try doing it now, and then when the series finished, come back, see what's changed with the remainder of the books to come. Yeah,
potentially, and I know, bless them, the authors are going to have a tough time over the next few books, kind of making sure everything works, and trying to fit as many of the characters in as make sense to the story and don't detract from it. And yeah, it's going to be a tough job for them. So we'll see how that affects things moving forwards. But yeah, Mechanicum, I think, is still up there. We reviewed it. We did it on After Eleanor not that long ago, and there is just so much in there. There's a lot of stuff going on.
Sure.
Yeah, it did. It really showed a few more secrets than maybe a lot of the other books did. With the Vaults of Moravec and the Nocturnus Labyrinth, whatever it's called. Those 2 things were like, oh my gosh, does this confirm this? Does this do this? I mean, how much of this can we believe in? And that didn't happen really again, I don't think, until First Heretic. That extent of how does this shake up our worldview of the Imperium of Man, which is always a bonus.
It certainly is. But should we move on to the next one then? So the last Heresy book that's come out so far in the Hatchette series is No Fear by Dan Abnett.
Yeah, this was a book which, for a lot of people, I think stood out amongst a period of time where, you know, there was some grumblings about the direction of the Heresy and things like that, but this got back to a major set piece which needed to be dealt with.
You mentioned before, didn't you? You know, Prospero, Calth, the big battles, the big turning points that were sort of in the background already.
Yeah,
that's what this one addresses head on. What happened at Calth, and it's interesting that Dan sort of talks about how he'd assumed Graham was going to write this one. I think probably everyone had assumed Graham would do, as Mr. Ultramarines. But I can't think of anyone I'd rather having, in hindsight, writing this than Dan. The way he did it, the characterization, the sort of narrative structure of the story. This is comfortably up in my top few. I think this book's fantastic.
Yeah, definitely. It's nice as well because Dan is not afraid to try out a new style of book. So he has a style, and if you read Gaunt's Ghost, they're very Gaunt's Ghost, and you read that, and you go through, and then Horus Rising came out, and then this, and then you look at the other one with on Ultramar.
The Unremembered Empire.
Unremembered Empire, which again is it's almost comic booky in places, which was it's superhero-y, should we say? And I think that was a definite thing. This was written almost. You could see this on screen with the marks and all that. It was written in an epic war style, which I think only helps and shows how good of a writer Dan is. And he gets grief from certain aspects, but he's not afraid to try stuff, and generally it really works. So
I completely agree. And those marks, the idea, if anyone hasn't read it, that Gulliman sets the point at which sort of the first blow is struck against him, and it's always tracking throughout the story of pre the mark in the first bit that we're seeing, and then how long that mark is going. And is it at the end of this, or is it in Mark of Calth where it talks about how long after the fact the mark carried on running until Gulliman sort of accepted, yeah, that's it, we're done, we've got to the end of this?
I think it might be Mark of Calth, because at the end of No Fear, Gulliman was otherwise occupied.
Yes.
I believe. So, I mean, I could be wrong on that, but I'm sure it is. Yeah, you're right, and particularly the pre-marks, the minuses, was just this build of tension in a way that, I've had watching the Two Towers when they're building up to the Uruk-hai attacking the fort deep.
Yeah, Helm's Deep.
Helm's Deep. There's this huge build of tension, which is when they throw the jokes in to kind of calm it. But imagine this coming up before like every other scene, minus, one ... whatever. And it's like, it's coming. And it just literally just having that on there creates a tension. Which is really very clever, because it allows the story then to be told without trying to give too much away, because the Ultramarines had no idea.
No, so, and that's the joy of the opening scene. We know what's coming, so it's that classic thing of you're watching, and the tension is different, because it's not like a horror film where you watch it for the first time and you've had no idea what's going to happen. We know exactly what's going to happen, and it's foreshadowed so strongly. But the Ultramarines, like you say, have got no idea. So this whole thing about, I think it's called the Campanile, the fleet tender that gets essentially sort of hijacked, and then the weird false camaraderie between the word bearer and the Ultramarine captain, who had become buddies on a previous campaign, and the word bearer boards the station, and it's this bonhomie that they're battle brothers, reliving things, and then all of a sudden, boom, changes. First blow struck. Oh, it's powerful.
Yeah, definitely. I tell you what, it's kind of like. It's kind of having read Game of Thrones and watching the episode of the Red Wedding, and then you look at everything that happens before that instant in such a different light. And if anyone's read the books and watched it, knowingly looking at other people watching it, going, "Oh, you think they're friends? Do you? Oh, you think that's going to happen?" Yeah, it adds a very different atmosphere, which does a cracking job. I really do like the style of that. And then essentially the whole story is the Ultramarines just trying to get a grip on things. The word bearers are all over it. Maybe there's a bit of overconfidence there, but then there would be.
And you feel like if they'd attacked any other legion, it'd have been game over. Because there's this sense for a while of the Ultramarines really reeling, just not knowing how to deal with it. But they just fall back on their training. They are the most perfectly sort of drilled, the best able to respond without needing to know really what's going on. Just fall back on their procedures, fall back on their training, and gradually you see the sense of Gulliman getting control back, turning the screw. And if the word bearers had attacked pretty much anyone else, I feel like maybe it wouldn't have succeeded as well. It would have succeeded, sorry.
Yeah, I think there's a few that could do it. I think the Ultramarines the important thing for them is their command structure. So that first kind of hecticness, that kind of real feeling of we've lost this. And then once they kind of get some form of command going, then they're organised. Then they're like, okay, now we know what we're doing. Now we're in the game. We'll do what we do best. I think the latest Heresy book talking about the Space Force shows they don't need a command structure. They are like able just to go, we're being attacked. Okay, my mission now is to do this. So there's a very different style there, and you feel that because it's all about, right, get here, meet up with this guy, do this, get the network back up. All right, and once they do that, it's almost a rising tide of every achievement they get. It's becoming like, oh, you better stop it at the next one, because otherwise they're going to roll through the next 3 achievements, and then you're on the back foot. And on top of that, we get to see Guilliman get angry.
Yeah.
Which is, and he loses it pretty much. And that's kind of a scary thing. This is the war accountant, the guy who's always in control, who's always got a plan, who's always ready, taken completely by surprise and giving in to that anger.
Yeah, totally. I guess that's at the heart of what a lot of people say about No Fear, which is Ultramarines boring, vanilla Marines, all this sort of stuff. And then I read No Fear, and I thought, wow, I'd never seen Ultramarines like that before. I mean, whether you thought that before or not, I think this demonstrates that Guilliman is a Primarch still. The gloves come off, people are going to suffer. There's that wonderful scene where essentially Guilliman's, I don't think this is spoiling anything really, he ends up outside the ship.
Yeah.
And all the Ultramarines are just thinking, well, that's it. He's in the void. He doesn't have a helmet on.
Yeah.
And I heard Dan once talk about how the cover had come back, and he'd basically given Neil some notes on the cover, and it came back, and there's Guilliman punching a head off a word bearer sort of thing. But oh, hang on a minute, he's outside and he's not got a helmet on. Oh, I'd better write that in then. Whether that's sort of apocryphal or not, I don't know. But I love the idea of it sort of thinking, the cover shows this. Oh, let's just do it. And this idea that, whoa, so a Primarch can survive in space. This is awesome. Guilliman is just still as cool, still as hard as all the rest of them.
Yeah, I mean, some people have an issue with that aspect of the book, and also kind of the ending of the book and some of the things that go on. Is there a bit of moustache twirling? But again, you've got a legion which is, the word bearers are absolute in their belief that they cannot be stopped at this point. We've got more than one plan going on as well.
Yeah. And if there's going to be any moustache twirling, it's going to be done by a word bearer.
Yeah, and it's not the levels of Battle for the Abyss. This is overconfidence rather than 1940s moustache twirling. But yeah, so you allow that. I think, as I say, also there are more than one plan. One of the few things we get to see Samus again. Not for very long. But it shows the depravity of the word bearers for the first time as well. This is them throwing off the shackles of pretending to still be playing the game. So we get to see that whole aspect. And in the middle of that, we also get, Perpetual doing his thing. Yeah, there's a lot going on in it. I really like it, as I say, kind of that war story. It makes me think of Star Wars at the moment with their non-numbered books, their films. They're basically going to do a genre film of each different style. So we've had the war film with Rogue One, and the next one's going to be like an adventure film or what have you. But it's almost like Dan's doing that, and I think when you show that the Heresy can live in these different genres, that only adds to the depth and the breadth of the Heresy.
Yeah, definitely. And I love the fact that the Heresy can do so many different things. And for me, I'd be happy for it to reach 100 books. I don't care. I know what's going to happen in the end. I can be patient. I appreciate a lot of people don't want that. But what No Fear does really well is, like you say, take this sort of genre novel, but actually also manage to be really forward thinking, pushing things on.
Yeah.
You might argue that some of them, Legion, for example, gives you a real good insight into the Alpha Legion, but it doesn't further the wider narrative of the Heresy that much. Fine. we can all have our opinions on these things, but No Fear sort of does both of those, I think.
Yeah, and that's helped by the nature of it being that iconic battle that had to happen as well. But yeah, it certainly does. And as you said, it makes you respect the Ultramarines, and it actually makes you respect, like, doing your job. Mm-hmm. It's like, because that's what they are. They're the boring guys because everyone supposedly paints them, even though no one paints them. It's more that GW paint them, and it's like, oh yeah, they're so codex, and they're so this, and they're so that. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. When you want dependable, the Ultramarines are there. Yeah. To do their job the way they're supposed to do it. And not quite to the rigidity of the Imperial Fists with their unbendingness, but with this kind of fluid kind of, they are the model soldiers out of all the legions. And they showed in this book why that's not a bad thing.
Definitely. And I think the book also showed, and I feel like Black Library really wanted to say this, probably Games Workshop wanted to say this, that there's a reason why the Word Bearers went after the Ultramarines. There was no way Guilliman was going to turn, and they had to find a way to stop the Ultramarines being in the game. Now, partially, it's because they were such a big legion, but partially, they were such an effective one. Simple as that. And I think it's worked out really nicely. And I like the Imperium Secundus arc. I like the way that they've developed that. Well, what happened next? Okay, we know that the Ruinstorm happened. We know the Ultramarines were out of the game, but we can't just leave them twiddling their thumbs. I appreciate people have concerns with the Imperium Secundus stuff. It's clearly wrapped up now, or about to be wrapped up. I really enjoyed that. I love the idea of Guilliman uncomfortably setting up the Second Imperium. He doesn't really want to do it, but he doesn't see an alternative. And I think that worked really nicely.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And as we go through all those legions that were taken out, the Blood Angels, the Space Wolves, the Ultramarines particularly, the Thousand Sons, there was good reason for doing so, and very different reasons and very different reactions from each of them to how they've done it. And, the pragmatism of the Ultramarines led them down a path which ultimately could have caused a huge amount of issues. Whereas the Space Wolves kind of restlessness and desire to be a major player ended, kind of actually hurt them more than it helped them. And we're looking at possibly the Blood Angels as actually coming out of it as the most kind of useful, of all those legions. But we're yet to see that final story kind of thing there. But yeah, absolutely brilliant. No Fear's up there. As I say, Dan does have a kind of, much like Graham actually, Dan and Graham kind of similarly, some people really don't like what they do within their books in terms of creating some issues. And there's been a couple with Dan that I've gone, I can understand that. He's created this thing and then that's become a bit of a stumbling block around other stuff, potentially. I think a lot of them are blown out of proportion.
Yeah, I agree.
But overall, when you look at that book, it was just a tense kind of nail-biting kind of thing. And at the end of it, yes, the Ultramarines are not destroyed. They kind of beat back the main attack on Calth. They've still got everything else going on in the 500 Worlds and the Ruinstorm and all that. But it's hard to say that they lost when they were attacked so overwhelmingly. I mean, maybe that's a British look at things, that we're always for the underdog. But, it's not like the Word Bearers went there and achieved all their objectives.
No, but I don't think there is a clear winner in that situation. The Word Bearers did not achieve their ultimate objective of A, Ruinstorm, B, wipe out the Ultramarines. Clearly it didn't happen, but the Ruinstorm was still instigated, so that was a success. But equally, from Guilliman's perspective, he's clawed the thing that's most closest to victory.
Yeah.
That he could have done out of it.
Yeah, and as we see moving on, he's actually tied up 2 whole legions plus whatever, within the 500 worlds to a point where they didn't really want to be there. So, ambiguity is never a bad thing in that aspect.
No, that's right.
And of course, this is also a viewpoint story as well, like most of them are. So everyone's going to have a slightly different take on things. You know that Horus wouldn't be fully pleased with what happened
No.
at Calth and in the 500 Worlds. So, yeah, I think if you're going to look at it that way, that tells you that it's not a complete win for the word bearers.
Mm.
Brilliant. Anything else about those three before we move on?
I just thought it'd be interesting to speculate on what you reckon might come next for the Heresy in this series.
Oof, good question. So I think it'll be an iconic book, probably an iconic battle.
Prospero burns Thousand Suns?
That would be logical, I think, for them. Maybe Cygnus. Maybe it's a little bit out there. And then they might go for something that's just big, like Moloch. Or they could go for real quality and pick something like Scars.
Scars, definitely.
Master of Mankind is probably going to be a bit too new to see in it for a while.
I think that's right.
So I don't think like Path of Heaven, I think they're probably too new. I think Scars potentially has been out enough time and is
maybe
of sufficient, top quality book.
Oh yeah,
to be included in that, and there's a lot of books in between. They could show a different aspect and put in something like Nemesis, which is works as a standalone book very well.
It does,
and shows kind of a different aspect of the Heresy. So, yeah, there's lots of stuff that could be put in that way. I'm just trying to have a little think through all the books, because you're probably not going to have any of the collections going.
I don't know. I've been surprised that there have been several collections in the series so far. There's been the Ultramarines, which is a 40k anthology. There's been Architect of Fate.
Oh yeah. So yeah, maybe they choose Tales of Heresy would probably be the best of them. I think generally. So maybe they would go that way. I'm trying to think of the books in the early 20s now. There's so many
without
books.
a list in front of me, I'm no good at remembering what comes where.
No, absolutely.
I think it's safe to say that there's plenty to choose from.
Yeah, Angel Exterminatus as a key kind of character piece has a lot of potential. So we've done first the Heretic. Yeah, who knows? There's some of Gav's stuff, the Raven Guard.
Yeah, or even one of the Dark Angels books. I know they're not as well received.
Yeah, it would be interesting if they did that, because I think they work together more than a lot of the
that's possibly
books,
right. Yeah.
which means you'd be left a little bit wanting more at the end of them. Which could cause some problems. But yeah, there's plenty of books in there. I keep thinking of Graham books. He seems to have written a lot,
He does.
And yeah, it does write a lot and has written ones that can stand by themselves a little bit more than some of the others, which, is just the thing really. But yeah, there's a lot of choice out there. They got, we got 40 odd books to choose from. They've got a lot of 40k books to go through as well. So it's going to be interesting, and it's going to be interesting now moving forwards as well, with the new edition of Warhammer coming out with a changing galaxy map, a warp rift that's spread across the whole galaxy, to see just where and how the novels tie into a new-ish storyline. Now, I've heard it's not going to be majorly new, that the orcs are still there punching stuff and all that jazz, but you've certainly got a lot more scope for stories when chaos are everywhere, with possibly more of a focus of chaos being the ultimate big bad guys.
Oh, I think that's definitely where it's going, isn't it? Surely there must be something coming out to do with the Death Guard in terms of novels. Now, it feels like Black Library have turned the corner from being really quite heavily tie-in based for a while.
Yeah.
Not part of the wider studio. I don't know how that's going to affect things like novels around a new release, but I'm pretty sure I saw Gav on Facebook or Twitter or something talking about how the next couple of things he's working on are post Gathering Storm. Cool. So clearly people have been knowing about this for a while, and they will have been writing their stuff in context of that. So, I just read for the first time, which is fairly terrible, but Blood of Azerheim, Chris Wright.
Oh, right, yeah.
I'd never read that when it first came out. I had it. I had the paperback. I just didn't read it. And seeing them fighting the Death Guard, I was thinking, oh wow, it's quite good timing to read this, really. And Chris has talked about how he'd love to finish that trilogy, but it's a bit tricky because of what's going on. You know, who knows? Maybe some of these things can be rolled in if they're set sufficiently close to the sort of changing timeline.
Yeah, I don't think the Warhammer 40k universe is going to change a huge amount. There's going to be a shift of focus. Yes, say with Chaos, the beauty of the Eye of Terror now having this warp rift as well means that everyone can fight everyone much more easily. The Tau was supposedly locked away on the eastern fringe of the Empire, so they really only should have been fighting a few, the Ultramarines and a few other bits and pieces. Should probably have got involved with the Space Wolves, very much that kind of thing, but now we've got this rift everywhere. It opens up the galaxy that little bit more.
For sure.
And we're going to probably going to have a very different Imperium as well. So, with Guilliman back, and who knows what else is going to happen. So, lots of rumours, lots of stories, but exciting times again.
Absolutely. And looking forward to seeing what comes next.
Brilliant. Right, well, we'll get you back on soon and then have some more book talk.
I look forward to that.
Right, cheers.
Thanks, mate.
Okay, so we have another newish part of the show. Neil's taking it on himself. So what's this little section going to be about, Neil?
Well, I thought it would be good just to do a quick topic that we can have a chat about. And my main idea was how to be a good, and that would be our main structure for what we talk about. And the first thing I wanted to bring up was how to be a good gamer. And we're splitting that down into, this is to discuss about dice etiquette.
Yeah,
so we're going to have a little mini chat every couple of weeks, just about a lot of little topic, but nothing too in depth, not sort of an hour long ramble.
Yeah, so it's how to be a good ... And your first idea was a gamer. That is a whole show within itself when you really look at breaking it down. So keeping this to not a particularly long part of the show, nice little segment we throw in. And yeah, there's a whole wealth of topics out there. If you've got any advice, so this can be, so obviously the gamer has a huge series of kind of, not necessarily how to be a good gamer in terms of ability, but how to be a good gamer in terms of once you get to the table, how you approach the game, how you behave and all that. But there's no reason this can't be how to be a good, a good player in terms of ability, how to be a good painter, how to be a good, whatever, really. Tournament organizer, event organizer.
And if anyone's got any ideas of what they think we should discuss as how to be a good ... then drop us some ideas as well.
Yeah, because there's loads of stuff we haven't even thought of. So, so awesome. So dice etiquette. Do you want to crack us off then? So what do we mean?
Yeah, right. So, okay. Well, first off, when I thought about dice etiquette, the first thing I thought of was one thing that always winds me up if I'm playing a player and they've got dice that aren't easy to read.
Sure.
So having the right dice, and for me it's frustrating where some people have a mix of ones with numbers on and some with dots on, and ones with the dots you can't really see them very clearly and all that sort of stuff. So for me it's having easy to read dice was my first point.
Sure. So in this example, sometimes it's the colours mix. Some dice, like you've got a slight goldish colour on a purple and white background. Sometimes that doesn't quite come through. Sometimes it's having complicated symbols, as you say, rather than the pips or the numbers. I haven't got a problem with numbers and pips, just as long as I can easily tell whether it's a 1 through to a 6. Something within this is, a lot of club dice have symbols. Now, it seems to be that 90% of them now, symbols are on the 6s, but there's still quite a few out there where the symbols are on the 1s. So making sure that when you're rolling dice, I've got rid of all my dice that have symbols on 1s. So I can just say every symbol you see is a 6.
Do you remember some of the dice that had symbols on both sides? So you had like a symbol for the 1 and a symbol for the 6.
Yeah, and it just gets confusing, particularly in a game where you're rolling 30, 40 dice at one time. The last thing you want to be doing is going, is that a 1, is that a 6? It slows the game down. And it's confusing because your opponent might be thinking, is he picking up a 1? Is he picking up a 6? So, yeah, definitely good to read dice. And that's why generally you get the club dice or the larger dice, as I say, and sometimes the colour scheme. Because some of the marbling effect looks great, and sometimes the pips get lost on them. I've got a couple of dice like that.
And I would always say that it's good to have like at least 2 sets of 2 colours in your dice bag or in your dice box or whatever you want to bring to the table. Because I find, it's useful to have those other colours that you can put, say, oh, this shot is the plasma pistol, or, makes life a little bit easier.
Yeah, a mix of dice can be done. I tend to do it quite quickly. Just here's 9, here's the whatever. But yeah, it can be. I mean, that's another thing actually. Do you, in terms of speeding up, do you utilise dice in that way? I think if you're someone who's not particularly quick at the game, that becomes more important. Whereas I can just throw some dice down quite quickly. I seem to play the game at a decent pace, generally.
Yeah. Some people are quick at throwing and quick at picking up, aren't they? Like, throw the dice down, bang, 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 that's that, roll that, right now you've got this many saves, and it's over in a matter of seconds.
Yeah, well, some people seem to take a little bit longer. Okay, excellent. Another
etiquette point. I would say it's, I wrote down in my notes of, don't roll your dice to break something. So there is several occasions I've had where models have been on the table and someone has just launched their dice into the models, and that always is a bit of a bugbear of mine. And I always think, if you're going to roll them somewhere sensible, and maybe dice trays and things like that are always a good investment.
Yeah, I have a dice tray. I use an old cigar box with a bit of felt in there that I got from my granddad after he died. We found it. He used to store pens, collect pens in there. And it's great. And a few of the YouTube people have dice trays as well. They can be easy to make out of a picture frame or something like that. And yeah, if you are rolling the dice, it's about rolling them not too vigorously across the table, particularly if you've got like those old GW metal dice. Dan's got a few, and all you have to do is drop that near a model and the models fall over. So he doesn't roll them anymore. He uses them for wounds or what have you. But, yeah, about doing that. And also I would say as well, rolling them in a place. So rolling them, not too vigorously, but in a place where your opponent can see them as well.
Yeah, that's quite key actually, because I've had a fair few games where, if you, especially on a big table or you're at funny angles, if someone's just rolling them over in their corner and the other opponent can't see them, it's always a bit sort of like, well, what are you rolling? What's that roll for? How many have you done? It does feel a bit off. So rolling in clear view is probably not a bad. Yeah.
And every now and then you're going to have a dice that kind of goes askew. But if you can move stuff around it without affecting the game, put it back to show what number it is, or if your opponent has to move, a little bit to their left or right, that's going to happen every now and then. But particularly if you don't know who you're playing, it's kind of a good thing to, that's a 6. Do you want to come and, look? That's handy. That's a 6 on his big roll, and he's already moved the dice.
Yes,
could get someone's back up.
Do you ever get it where you put down a dice or dice for wound counters and vehicle damage and stuff, and then they end up getting picked up with other rolls of your opponent, etc.?
Yeah, one thing I try and do with that is I try and use a different size die. So I've got the big club dice, and then I've got the little GW size dice. I've got a few of them in my bag. So if it comes down to a wound counter, I'll try and use one of them instead. I mean, some people just use wound counters instead, which is, clearer, but I tend to find that I'll forget to bring them or what have you. So
yeah, and one thing I do suffer from as well is I can get into a bit of an enthusiastic roll when it's getting tense, and often then the dice go everywhere.
Oh yeah,
flying off the table.
Every now and then I miss my dice box. I bounce out the dice box. But again, yeah, that comes down to, anything off the table I consider to be null and void no matter what.
Oh really? You're hard line on that?
Well, it's gone off the table. Pick it up, roll it again. There became a thing in like tournament Warhammer, particularly ETC, called Flat on the Green. Because again, sometimes you get that one. Is that cocked? Is that not cocked?
And the new the GW boards as well are a nightmare for cocked dice.
So, particularly, most of the time I'll say, look, we'll just play it. If it's not completely flat, then it's cocked. Because, in that way, it's obvious. There's no, I can balance a die on this one if I do it this way, and it's not, you don't get into an awkward situation where someone's looking at a die thinking, yeah, I'm going to claim it. The other person's going, well, I don't know about that. So it's just nice and easy. And if you say that at the start, if you work it out, usually for me it's like, oh, that's cocked. I play completely flat, so I'm going to re-roll everything that's not completely flat, and then that way you know where you're going. And if you roll a 6 and it's not completely flat, well, you've already said you're going to do that, so pick it up, re-roll it.
Yeah. Have you ever seen any major issues in tournaments and things, bits and pieces with dice? And
I mean, it's going to be more tournaments, isn't it, than narrative events, although some of them can get heated. And when you've got two opponents who maybe don't get on quite as well, or there's a history or something like that, I have seen some, very interesting exchanges about what is what. Another one alongside that would be when I was at GW, when I was a key timer back in the day, always instilled in the kids pick up all your misses, because that's one way we used to have the odd kid come in who'd roll his dice so quickly that you wouldn't know what he's picking up. But if you always pick up your misses, unless you say, look, there's so many hits so many misses in here, I might as well remove my hits. You make it clear that way. But if you pick up your misses and you accidentally pick up one too many dice, you're only going to hurt yourself.
Yes, I'm with you. Yeah. It's easier to then see what's going on, isn't it?
Yeah, and there are times if I'm rolling lots of dice, again, you're rolling it in view of everyone. If I'm rolling 20 odd, 30 odd, 40 odd dice, I might just go, right, there's miss, and then have a little check and kind of almost invite my opponent. Like, that's all my misses? Oh no, there's a 2 there. Oh yeah, cool. There's some, the light glinted off it. I thought it was a 3. Okay, cool. Take that one out. Because at the end of the day, when it comes to dice, it's all about making the game smoother, more enjoyable for each of you, because, you're not out to, well, if you are out to cheat someone with dice, then don't bother listening to the show,
Yeah.
But all these things just help. And sometimes it's a thing, I never thought of that. Going to events does help you think more about what you're doing, because I say you're meeting people you don't know. So it's like, hold on, that dice keeps rolling behind that building. It's like, okay, well, actually, I feel a bit bad about that. Let's roll it somewhere else.
Yeah. And with good tables, it can be a bit awkward with lots of buildings dotted about.
Yeah.
And it can be very easy just to chuck them all. I often found that you found a little flat area, often was sort of a set of ruins or something, and I ended up just rolling stuff in there because it's going to contain the dice. And they're not going to go flying. So yeah, it can be, but then you got to be mindful that people need to see it. So
yeah, absolutely. So one other big thing as well is actually informing your opponent of specifically what you're rolling for. Like, this unit is shooting at this unit. This unit, these are this. This is its melter gun. This is my panic test for this unit.
Yes. Stating what you're up to is really important.
Yeah, again, 99% of the time it'll be fine. It'll be obvious. There will be the odd occasion where you're like, isn't that a panic test on that one? It's like, oh no, I was doing this over here. It's like, oh, I thought you were doing that one,
Yeah, there's nothing worse than a load of dice being rolled down and someone sort of turns around and just says, oh, but what was that for?
Yeah.
Well, that was your shooting, was it? Oh, okay, yeah, carry on.
Yeah, I've seen it happen, I've had it happen to me at an event where someone just rolled some dice. I wasn't fully paying attention, and they went 11 wounds on that unit, and I'm sitting there going, you hit 12 times with like 4s with rerolls and wounded, so 11 out of 12 wounds, then needing like 3s. And I'm like, doesn't sound likely, Don't think you rolled to wound, did you, mate? And he's like, well, yeah, I did. And I'm sitting there because I wasn't paying attention as well. Made it worse. Maybe he did roll that well, but I was a bit, what happened there kind of thing. And that can put a sour taste in the mouth, So yeah, being clear, and also it gives the opponent a chance as well of just pointing out errors you might make. So the amount of times I say, look, if I do something and it sounds a bit weird, point it out to me because I might have made a mistake on that. So being very clear about my ordinator, say for my Mechanicum, he's got, he has an extra dice to all his armor pen rolls. Plus,
yes.
He's got the ability to fire ordnance weapons as well if he's dropping them. So you can do, that gets confusing. So I'm going to roll these 2 dice, pick the highest for the ordnance from the, drop, blah, blah, blah. And then I get to add a d6 to which of those highest 2 it is. If you just roll 3 dice, 2 dice of one colour, 1 dice of another colour, swap the dice around, people are going to think you're playing weird tricks.
Yeah, like, what is it? And also with certain armies, you do need to explain, not everyone is probably completely up to speed with things like Mechanicum. No. So it can be that you have to explain what you're doing, the strength it's got, the ability it infers, all that sort of stuff, because it's very easy to get like, well, what was that for? What? Why have you given me, told me I've got 7 wounds to save? And all this sort of, a bit of explanation goes well.
I think one final one I've got, certainly, is if someone really wanted to, they can use my dice. I kind of get a bit protective of dice. I think a lot of us do. I'm like, these are my dice, those are your dice, why are you rolling these dice? But if someone was like, look, I want to roll your dice because, you're doing this, I'm like, okay, roll my dice. Because I have little superstitions. Like, if I've rolled 6 dice and they've all rolled 5s and 6s, I'll probably move them to the side and pick up 6 more.
Oh, really?
They've rolled well, right? So, it's no logical sense, but I'm like, the average roll on 2 dice is a 7, so if I pick them all up, chances are I'm going to roll 1s and 2s. It's completely illogical, but it's just a dice. It's just a dice.
I'm the opposite. If I'm rolling a 5 or 6 on a die, I end up going to keep using that. That's a good one.
Yeah, you have these little things like there's a couple of dice in there. I've got my USA dice, and every now and then I'll be like, this calls for a USA dice, and that USA dice rolls average. But when it comes up as USA, sometimes it's happened on more important rolls. It's no real kind of, it's just random. It doesn't roll any better than any other dice, but I like to use it at certain points. It let me down so many times in latest Warhammer tournaments, rolling for initiatives. It's like I pick up the USA dice, that's a 2. Okay, that dice isn't working. But I understand that people might go, why do you always go to that dice? But it's one that's mixed into my bag. It's not like it's separate. I'm not doing anything fishy with it. And if someone else said, I want to roll that dice, then, well, yeah, cool, roll that dice. You'll see it's as bad for you as it is for me. or completely random, So
I've had it before where I've rolled some ridiculous rolls and the people I play I know really well would walk over and pick my dice up and sort of do the fake weighing gesture, like, yeah, all right then.
Well, I did it on the live feed of Warhammer Live. We were in the doubles, and the bloke rolled 2 6s for his priority rolls in a row, and so my hand just shot out and rolled his dice again. I was only joking, but it was like, just I'll test that dice, that kind of thing. But 99% of the time, everyone's fine. Little things can cause problems. I think some of the biggest ones are telling them what you're rolling for, rolling in clear line of sight, and if you pick up your misses, you're less likely to cause any issues.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, simple things.
Yeah, and if you do it as well, I mean, the amount of times you picked up a hit there as one of your misses. Did I? So yeah, that was a 3. Oh, I thought it was a 2. No, definitely a 3. Put another one back on. So, yeah, that's cool. I think, if anyone's got anything we missed with dice, then give us a shout.
Let us know.
Tell us where to buy the best weighted dice. There's little gel ones. Might win a few more games.
The ones Greg already uses.
Well, no, I've always thought if you were going to cheat with dice, like in 40k, 4s are usually good enough. So just put an extra 4 on there.
Yeah.
That kind of thing, or weight it to the 4 rather than the 6. 6s stand out, but I don't know. So yeah, if you think we missed anything, then give us, or if you disagree, with anything we said, give us a shout. And yeah, feel free to send in your ideas for other little sections we can do, topics. Okie dokie, another episode. There were plans for this episode. It did change, so that's why it might seem a little bit different in format. We pulled the Michael stuff in and extended that to help run through. Hopefully, we should be back on. It was an unfortunate kind of just not an error, but a timing issue for getting someone on. So we should be back to normal from next week. We have a few things to shout out, don't we? So some people are doing some charity stuff.
Yes, some people are doing some charity stuff. So, Martin Waller, who is, Slayer Sword winner, multiple demon winner, he's been running a few, charity raffles. I think we mentioned before he was doing a raffle for a miniature that Duncan had painted, which was a very much sort of, put a pound in the pot and, the winner gets the model. He's also doing another one very shortly for, a Blood Bowl special character, I believe, that, you get to bid and then get to choose the character, colour scheme, team, etc. So he's doing that. So go and check out his, Facebook and, Instagram, all that sort of stuff. And he's got a link to a PayPal page for putting your donations in.
Excellent stuff. Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, go and check that out. Martin's a great painter. And it's good to see some more stuff being done for charity.
Yeah.
There are a few more painting groups as well. MK seem to dominate the Heresy kind of limelight. And they do, they're great airbrush courses and painting courses that they do. But there's a few others, aren't there?
Yes, so there's been a few, some big names that have sort of come into sort of the masterclass sort of scene. So David Soper, who's very well known for multiple Slayer swords and amazing work. Yes, so he's looking to do a painting course, like a masterclass course at Element Games. Yeah. So a great, if you're looking for some real, probably high end sort of tips, because he does some amazing work. So you're gonna, everyone could learn something off David Soper. So I can imagine it's going to sell out pretty quick. I'm not too sure if the tickets have sold out, but.
So this is 3rd and 4th of June. The subject of the workshop will be aged and distressed non-metallic metal armor, like what he has used on his Mega Boss. You can find this on, sprocketsmallworld.blogspot.co.uk is where his blog is. Or just, I think I typed in David Soper, painting class. But yeah, using scale colour paints, which apparently are all very, very good. A lot of painters seem to like them. But yeah, that seems like it could be quite a good little thing to jump on.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking for those sort of really high-end classes, his is going to be fantastic. And there's also another Slayer Sword winner, Richard Gray. He's also going to be running some classes.
He's freehand, isn't he? Concentrating on.
He's a real freehand person, and also like sort of weathering. But he does a lot of his weathering with freehand. It's going to be that's again a very sort of intense class. I can imagine it being, really sort of quite high end sort of stuff. But he's running that event at Alpha Games?
Yeah, something like that.
And they sold the first one out, and they've then released another one for September time. So,
brilliant.
Again, there's more tickets up for that as well. So if you're interested in some, maybe some classes that would take you to a different type of painting or really push your limits, definitely check those out.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's all cool. In terms of the charity stuff, I have failed to put the raffle up with everything going on. It will be going up. Right, because it's only 2 weeks to the event now. So it's going up. It will be everywhere. I'll keep posting about it. Go and check out theimperialtruth.com to find out about what we're giving away. It will be a CD, a book, a poster, and a session with Miles. At least those 4 prizes, maybe some more. So, maybe not as prestigious as winning a model painted by Neil, but some cool stuff there anyway. And
definitely go check it out.
Good excuse to give to charity as well. So, get on that. I just wanted to jump on because we're finishing recording this on the Saturday. We got the GW releases for the day, and they've released some awesome terrain. So,
yes,
the Sector Mechanicus galvanic servo haulers. So, some little trucks with arms on and a crane with an arm on. And just awesome. And then some more kind of buildings in that style as well, that kind of go with Shadow War, but can also be used for 40k. All collected together, they do a big industrial terrain collection. It's fantastic, this terrain. Like, seriously good.
It is some seriously good looking stuff. I must admit, I thought it was quite well priced as well. I thought it was was it £25 for that set of sort of all the cranes and stuff?
The cranes and that, there's 3 items in there at £25. There's quite a lot of stuff there to choose from. So go and have a look. And that's GW prices. So again, you go to Element, you're going to get 20% off that.
Yes.
So there's nothing to be sniffed at at all. Really good stuff. And we've got the 40th anniversary edition of White Dwarf as well this month, which is going to be packed full of stuff. There's a big John Blanche section in there, I think, which is always going to be an interesting read, which, is cool. He's on Instagram now as well.
Is
John
he
Blanche.
really?
Yeah, he was talking on Facebook about having the difference is he has, there's artist and there's miniature stuff as well, and I think he wanted to just separate them a little bit because people are coming to look for one or what have you. So certainly his Instagram, he's posting up a lot of pictures of his models. So you can find him on Instagram. Just some typical John stuff really. It's all that style that he has. Let me just, his Instagram name is, Lawrence John Blanche. And you can follow him. He's been posting a fair amount, which is really cool because there's some weird, wacky, wonderful things in there, as you would expect, really.
You would do from it. If it was all a very different style, you wouldn't believe it was him, would you?
No. Yeah. In fact, most of my feed at the moment is him posting up stuff. So go and check that out if you are interested. Just all the usual stuff to do, is there?
I think so, yeah.
Cool. So anything to do with the show, you can email greg@theimperialtruth.com.
And neil@theimperialtruth.com.
And then we have the Instagram. So at the Instagram, let's go for the Instagram. You're on there?
I am there at Neil Paints.
And I'm there at Child of Fang. What we're going to try and do with the event coming up in a couple of weeks, we're not going to talk about that too much on next show because it will have to be recorded mainly before then. So we will have to have that all done. So what we will try and do is put up as many photos as we can on Instagram and Twitter and the Facebook. I just need to get a little bit better at that. But with Neil not playing this year, this event, I might try and get you to do a bit more of that.
Yeah, I'll be very keen on that. Yes.
Good lad. And I'll set you up with the page accounts and all that. So go and check out Imperial_Truth on Twitter for them, and my stuff's at Child of Fang on Twitter as well.
Yes, and I'm at Neil Paints on virtually everything.
And then also we'll try and fill up a Facebook photo album with all the photos as well. So on the Imperial Truth, search for the Imperial Truth on Facebook as usual. And go buy stuff from Element Games because there's so much good stuff coming out at the moment. It is just knocking it out of the park. Again, we keep saying it, but we got 8th edition coming up, which is looking groovy. We've got all this Shadow War kind of stuff, all these games that keep coming out, and there's talk of more. So it's a great time to be in the hobby. Don't be looking at the negatives of it. Always be looking for the positives of it, and you will get so much more out of this hobby. That changing attitude. If you are one of those people who's a little bit more pessimistic, then start trying to find what you enjoy and what you can look forwards to. Because I think you will get, over the next 2 or 3 years, it's going to be an avalanche of stuff.
I still can't believe we're in this golden age, and I'm quite worried about where it's going to go to.
Another golden age.
At some point, it's got to stop.
Well, you say that, does it? I mean, that's the thing, does it? With everything else that's going on, they can bring out other little games, and there's so much they can do. You know, they're talking about 40k having new races as well in the new edition. There's huge amounts of stuff they can do. So ride the wave, and and if you're at London Heresy, then we look forward to seeing you there. And if you're playing in the 40k at London Heresy, then at the London 40k GT, then come down and say. And if you're in London, actually, you can come. Go and Google London 40k GT, find out the information. You can come and have a walk round as well. And obviously the 40k is going to be on the TVs that weekend as well on Warhammer Live. But yeah,
so lots of ways to check it out.
Yeah, absolutely. Get involved. I think that's it. Thanks for joining us again, Neil. We'll be back next week, a couple of weeks, hopefully with what was planned for this week, which is always good, but some more how to be a good ... So remember to get your suggestions in for that and your views and opinions. And Neil can do some more homework.
Yes.
Excellent stuff. We'll leave that there. You have been listening to The Imperial Truth.